Welcome to the July 11th meeting for City of Pembroke. I'd like to start first with the land acknowledgement. As we gather today, I would respectfully acknowledge on behalf of Council and the community that the City of Pembroke resides on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. It is with this statement that we honor and respect the Algonquins on which the land we reside. So the second item, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is to elect a chair for this meeting, but I would also suggest that we would do it for the July meeting and the August meeting for the combined committee. So I'd open it up for a motion.
So I'd like to move that the Finance and Administration Chair chair the meetings for combined committee for the months of July and August.
And second by Councillor Keogh?
Yes.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the motion to vote. All in favor? Yep, passed. Thanks. I'll turn it over to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Could we have a motion to approve the meeting agenda? Motion by Councillor Keogh, second by Councillor Jacquinot. Well,
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that the agenda be amended.
okay.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Jacquinot, that the agenda of the combined committee meeting of this particular meeting be amended to add an 8K being water purification plant filters and launderers and under tile drain design.
Motion on the floor. Any discussion? Those in favor? Accepted. Thank you. Next item, approval of minutes from the
Just
planning. Yes?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Just in regards to the item number 3, disclosure of particular interest.
Oh, yes, my apologies. Okay. Any disclosure of peculiar interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Approval of the minutes of the Planning and Development Committee meeting for June 6. Moved by Councillor Keogh, seconded by Councillor Jacquinot. Those in favor? Carried. And then we have Finance and Admin Committee, June 6. Motion to approve the minutes. Mayor Gervais, seconded by Councillor Frenier. Those in favor? Carried. Parks and Rec Committee, June 20th. Moved by Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Frenier. Carried. Operations Committee for May 16th. Motion to approve. Moved by Councillor Jacquinot, seconded by Councillor Keogh. Those in favor? Accepted. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we'll move forward to item 7. We have a special guest tonight with a delegation. Welcome, Ms. Gruntz from the MPAC, formerly known as the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation for Ontario. Welcome.
Thank you. So, good evening, and thank you very much for having me here tonight to give you a overview on MPAC, kind of a high-level 101 of what we do and how we're here to help you. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jennifer Gruntz, and I am the local account manager for all of Renfrew County, including the City of Pembroke. And I look forward to working with all of you, and please know that it's not just myself. There's always a team of us behind to answer any questions if there's times that I cannot. So at MPAC, we are Ontario's property experts, and our job is to classify more than 5.5 million properties across Ontario, and they're worth a combined value of more than $3 trillion. In the past year, Ontario has grown by approximately 45,000 residential homes, and in 2022, we added $37 billion to our assessment roll. And every municipality uses our assessments to make informed decisions on how their municipalities, including the distribution of property taxes. So Ontario's property tax system and these assessments generate approximately about $30 billion in tax revenue annually. So there's 4 key players that make up Ontario's property taxation system. So we have the Ontario government, MPAC, municipalities, and property owners. So the provincial government, specifically the Minister of Finance, is responsible for setting assessment and taxation legislation, as well as policies. They also determine the education property tax rate. And under this umbrella also falls the Assessment Review Board, which is an independent body that adjudicates all of our assessment appeals. Then we have MPAC, and we are an independent, non-for-profit corporation that are funded by all Ontario municipalities. And our role is to accurately assess and classify all properties in Ontario in compliance to the Assessment Act and regulations set by the Ontario government. Then next we have municipalities. So municipalities determine their budgets, set tax rates, and collect property taxes to pay for municipal services such as police, fire, roads, recreation, among many, many other things. Municipalities, again, use MPAC's assessments and their established tax rates to determine their tax requirements to ratepayers. And then finally, we have property owners. So property owners pay the bills for their property tax, and they help to set market value through the ongoing of purchase and sales of properties. So we maintain our Ontario property database, and we know that this is a really important and big job. It's continuously updated so that municipal records are accurate for tax decisions. So ways that we do that is regular inspections and assessments of new constructions, additions, and renovations. We track school support data. We complete requests for reconsiderations and appeals. And we also respond to property owner inquiries. And we work with them and municipalities to help them understand how property assessments work and educate them around that. In addition, we support municipalities and we provide ongoing support. One of the systems and softwares that they have available to them is Municipal Connect, where they can obtain assessment-related information right at their fingertips. And then we also work collaboratively on new initiatives and projects. So the most recent one would have been the digital building permit plan. So we also update every single property assessment in Ontario based on the same legislated valuation date, and we call this an assessment update or a reassessment. So the valuation date for the most recent assessment update, which took place in 2017, is still January 1st, 2016. And that should have been carried from 2017 to 2020. However, we're 3 years past that, and we're still on the same valuation date. And this is a point in time when all properties are assessed at the same date and what they could have been reasonably sold for at that current state and condition at a point in time. So, like I said, the last reassessment was scheduled to occur in 2020, was postponed by the provincial government, and that was to provide stability to Ontarians and to municipalities to mitigate the challenges of the pandemic. So as a result, property assessments continue to be based on the legislated valuation date of January 1st, 2016. But that doesn't mean our work doesn't stop. We do regular evaluations of properties to ensure our assessments stay up to date. So this slide explains how an assessment cycle works. So there's a link between the 3 key parts. So there's the valuation date, notices are mailed, and then the phase-in. So we don't know the chosen valuation date, but when there is a chosen valuation date, we would do our work, we would send out the values of the assessments. Every property owner in Ontario would get then a property assessment notice mailed to them. If that property assessment increases from what number, it would increase 25% over the 4 years. However, if your property assessment decreases, it would flatline the first year for the remainder of that cycle. So in Ontario, we have 3 industry-wide approaches to valuing properties. There's the direct comparison, income, and cost. Direct comparison being the most common, and that was what we call the sales approach. So we use recent sales of comparable properties to analyze and provide an indication of value. So we use sold properties to determine the values of unsold properties. So this would include residential properties, condos, vacant land. And there's 5 main factors that would build up about 85% of those values. So it'd be lot size, location, exterior square footage, the quality of construction, and then the age of the property. And then next we have the income approach, and it would be the ability to earn revenue. So it's income in by the way that the landlord can generate a rent, not necessarily what the Walmart or box store is making at that store. So examples are industrial malls, large medical centers, dental buildings, etc. And then finally we have the cost approach, and this approach is used when a lot of these properties don't transact on the market regularly. So they, as in the term of the name, they are costed. So there's a kind of a 3-step approach. First, we calculate the cost of actually replacing the physical construction of the building. Second, if any economic or functional obsolescence is required to be depreciated, we apply that depreciation to it. And then third, they determine the land value through the direct comparison approach. So all 3 of those factors come to determine how a typical cost property would be valuated. So MPAC, what draws us to our properties? We have a trigger to get to the property. So one of the big ones we go to is we investigate sales. We take requests from municipalities or property owners. We do visit properties that have requests for reconsiderations or appeals on the property. And then the biggest thing would be the building permits. And we know that it's important for MPAC to take building permits and plans and turn them into assessment. Every year we process on average about 300,000 building permits for new renovations and new development and renovations. And we know that our municipal partners rely on that to make the informed decisions to make for their levy and tax decisions on the go forward. So the sooner that we get the information from the municipalities, the sooner that we can implement and get those values onto the roll, the better it is for everybody. So after we do add new value or change in assessment, we do mail, like I said, we mail the property owner a property assessment notice that outlines the information that's changed and the overall information of their entire property. And sometimes property owners don't necessarily agree with our assessed values. So a property owner might connect with you to let you know that they disagree about their new assessment or maybe about the change in value. And one of the things is just to remember that their assessment is not taxation, so that's the first thing. And then a few key things that you can maybe get started if you wanted to help them back is ask them. So the biggest one would be ask them if they could sell their property as of January 1st, 2016 for their assessed value. The next thing you could direct them to is that we have a website, and it's aboutmyproperty.ca, and they can get on there and they can look at all of their property data just to see if maybe the facts are correct. So that'd be the next start. Also on that website, they can conduct their own comparable research of looking up properties of their neighbors, maybe similar properties that have sold, and they can use that to come up with a better idea of whether they feel they're fairly assessed. And then finally, if they're still unhappy with that, they also on that same website have the option to file a request for reconsideration, which is free of charge review for us as long as it's filed within the legislated date. So in anticipation of the next province-wide reassessment, we've also implemented a strategy to address some misconceptions about the relationship between assessed value and taxation, which includes resources for municipalities, homeowners, and council members. So there's a digital toolkit, and it is available on mpac.ca, and it can help mitigate misinformation and provide support and resources to educate and inform property owners. So there's a video, which I will show you next. There's some one-pagers, the myth versus facts, and there'll be a really good resource for you to check out if you'd like to educate yourself a little bit further, or for homeowners, a place to direct your ratepayers to do some further research on their own. So this is the video that's on our website. Not sure are you able to play it? Okay. It's on our YouTube. It's about a 4-minute video. It's really simple, and it just goes over how the change in assessment doesn't equal a tax rate.
And we want something big. time to sell?
Well, obviously not. 2 words.
I
Mercury
apologize for
and
the
retro.
ad first. There's always an ad, unfortunately.
Property taxes are based on your home's value. What you might not know is that an increase in your home's value doesn't necessarily mean your taxes will go up.
To explain, let's take a look at how your property taxes are calculated. Imagine there's a town that only has 3 homes, and they're each worth a different amount. The total cost to provide all of the town's services is $1,200. This is collected through property taxes. Each homeowner pays property taxes based on their home's assessed value. So we take the total cost of services and divide it by the total property value. This tax rate is applied to all the houses to get enough money to pay for the town's services. Each homeowner pays according to the assessed value of their home, and every 4 years, the houses are reassessed. Let's say all 3 properties have gone up equally in value. The total cost of services hasn't changed, but the total property value has increased. When this happens, there will be a decrease in the tax rate. Now, when we apply that new rate on all the homes, everyone still pays the same. Now, let's say another 4 years has gone by, and these homes are reassessed. During this time, the house on the right gains more market value than the other 2. The total value of all the homes have increased, which means the town has to calculate a new tax rate. With this new tax rate, the first 2 homes will actually pay less than the home on the right that was reassessed at a higher value. Since the cost of services hasn't changed, the town doesn't need to collect more property taxes on the whole. However, since property taxes are based on a home's value, taxes for each individual home could potentially go up or down based on the rest of the homes. So, what happens when the cost to provide services goes up? Well, it means more property taxes need to be collected from every home and a new tax rate is calculated. To get the new rate, we take that amount that the town now needs and divide it by all of the property values. The new rate is applied to all the homes, and now everyone has to pay the new tax amount to continue to fund the town's services. So, let's review. 1. Property taxes are based on the assessed value of a home. If all assessments go up equally, everyone pays the same. 2. If all assessments do not go up equally, there's a redistribution of the tax. 3. If the town's cost to provide services increases, the municipality may choose to increase the tax rate. When this happens, everyone pays their share of that increase. And that explains the relationship between property value and property taxes.
So this is a nice short video that kind of very simply explains some of the misconceptions. And I know it is on our mpact.ca website. And there's also a few other, if on mpact.ca, there is also a few other little short videos that explain some other misconceptions. So it's just something if you would like to use that as a resource for yourselves, to watch it or to explain to your ratepayers, I find it very helpful. So there's a few other options to stay connected. We do a monthly newsletter, and it's called In Touch, and it just basically gives an overview of what's new and upcoming. And we are on social media on Facebook, Twitter. We have a YouTube channel, and then the newsletter that's put out every month. So if you haven't subscribed, maybe think about going on to mpact.ca and putting your name on the list. And that's pretty much all I have. So thank you very much for having me here today. And this is my contact information. I'm happy to take any questions or concerns, comments. And just like I said at the beginning, I'm happy to always here to help. If you have anything, after tonight, you think of something else, feel free to reach out to the finance staff, and they can get a hold of me as well.
Thank you for the very simple and informative presentation. MPAC has been on a lot of residents' minds, so it's very good that you came tonight to explain that all to us in a simplified format. Questions from council? Councillor Frenier?
Thank you. There's a lot of misconceptions about assessment, and
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying for anyone that didn't understand it.
Yes.
My question is, you had an interesting comment about the fact that assessments were frozen because of COVID and didn't want to increase the impact of COVID. That boggles my mind in a way, because it didn't put a freeze on real estate increases.
Nope.
So
Yeah.
is that going to skew everything? Like, are you going to base your new assessments on the increased prices? Because let's face it, if I look at my assessment the last time it was done. And with the recent, skyrocketing of home prices, are you going to base the new assessment on that? Because that would be a comparison. And I guess, what happens if the price starts to drop? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I understand that there's a
Because
lot
it
of
seems
questions
to me
around
the government should have froze real estate prices, because now rents are higher,
Yeah.
even though the assessment hasn't changed on these properties.
Right.
So it seems like, yeah.
It's really going to depend on what the Minister of Finance decides for a valuation date. And once we are aware of that valuation date, then yes, we will use open market sales of properties to determine what that style of property is going to be assessed at in relation to the taxation. That will be determined, that will be the finance staff that will have to determine how that tax rate is going to affect or what the tax rate is going to be depending on their stipulations and budget in order to determine how that may or may not affect your taxes. So potentially, yes, your assessment could be very much increased, or some people it might be decreased, but may not directly affect your taxes as much, which is why this video is very helpful to explain that. So hoping if people are seeing their assessments go from 200 to 400, just using round numbers, rough numbers, that it doesn't necessarily, it's not meaning your taxes are going to double. Yeah. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Giacono?
Deputy Mayor, through you to Jennifer. Thank you, Jennifer. I really enjoyed that short, little informative video. It kind of brings it all into perspective, and the average person can maybe understand that a little better.
Yes.
My question to you, now I know that Premier Ford, in his wisdom, and I think he is really trying to do something positive for the province with affordable housing. That's the catchphrase that's being heard, right across the province and the country as well, affordable housing. I sit on the Renfrew County Housing Authority on the board, and presently in Renfrew County alone, there are 1,300 people looking for a place to live that's affordable.
Right.
They're looking for social housing. So that, and I think a lot of people that are in social housing have been stigmatized by the fact that, I'm here, I really can't get out of here. They're trying their best. A lot of them are paying, their rents based on their income, but they would like to live perhaps in a small little unit somewhere. They don't want to be clumped into one area. And I guess the Premier's, the catchphrase is Bill 25, affordable housing. What is affordable? And I mean, that's what it comes down to. There has to be, I believe, a separate class for this type of affordable housing to help individuals to try and destigmatize themselves and come into their own and, have the same opportunities that many people have across the country. I don't think that's happening. And I think what needs to happen is, as I said, there has to be a special class set up for assessment for these folks to give them a break and to get them going. And we've had other groups here. I know that the Deputy Mayor sits on another group for affordable housing in Renfrew County, and they have the same issues. They want to have a nice little affordable place where they can go. There are other options. What's it called? REM? Is it REM? Where you move into a farmhouse with an older couple and you take over. What was the terminology?
The Sparrow share.
Sparrow. I had the bird wrong. Not Wren, Sparrow. Anyway. So anyways, there are other options taking place. I think something has to be done, and I'm looking for your input. Do you think that will happen? Because these folks are reaching out, and Stats Canada is telling us that we have, a recent large immigration influx of people. Our population's gone from, 1958, from 21 billion to 41. So it's almost doubled in 40 to 50 years. So somehow we have to anticipate that. And not only in the GTA area, where a lot of these people are moving, but I met a lady yesterday. She was from Vietnam. Her husband is from the Dominican Republic. They bought property here. They're moving out of the city core for the fresh air and the security. So do you think that the province, through impact, through suggestions, I don't know if you do that, to the ministers or whatever, come up with a special formula for these folks?
So that would require definitely a legislative change to start at, through the provincial government, because as of right now, we are legislated through them to follow the Assessment Act, to assess all these properties based on open market sales, like I had mentioned before, like a willing buyer to a willing seller. We do collaborate with them, like our we have a board of directors and our executive management group, and they know they regularly meet with the Minister of Finance, and I would assume on many topics, including the new assessment update. I'm not entirely sure about the bill because that's not something that I've ever heard yet about, that we're dealing with that. But in order for MPAC to make any adjustments, that would have to come through a legislative change for us to have a way to determine which type of properties those are, whether they give them a special property code, or if there's a tax class, and that might be through the municipality. But I can't give you an answer on that because that's something that would, like I said, would require some legislative provisions. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor, just a short final blurb. I know that the Warden of Brantford County, Mr. Peter Emo, goes to AMO, he goes to the various conferences, and this is a point of contention, not only in the within the county, but right across the province. And I think some sort of a special class has to be developed with the municipality involved, of course, and also some funding coming from the provincial government. They're funding geared income housing now. Why can they not also give folks a chance and come up with a new tax class that deals specifically with, I don't want to use the word homeless and derelict, but about people who want to have a little place to live and have the comfort zone that many of us have, and many of them will never experience. And I mean, to me, that's a tragedy. And if they're talking about affordable, then let's put a price on that. What is that? Affordable in Toronto, $1.5 million for a bungalow, it's not affordable to a guy that's working at KI and his wife is struggling as a waitress at the Bonanza or working. They have two incomes. They'd like to do it, they just cannot do it. So there's got to be some consideration. Thank you.
So you're welcome. I think hopefully that Mr. Iman will be, with being the board on the AMO board, maybe a representative to voice those opinions, for the county and for individuals. And I think that's the way that, potentially those changes may happen, is having a seat at the table. All right. You're welcome.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm just wondering, Mr. Unruh, if the committee would agree to this, we could put a link to this presentation on the city website, because it's very short and informative.
Yeah, I can talk to staff and see if we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing that would be is just to make sure that everything's accessible. To go on our website, everything has to
okay.
be accessible, so we'll have to just verify that.
Okay.
We can work together after the meeting to make sure that if there's something that needs to be changed, I can work with communications or IT and see if we can't get that. Okay.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you very much for coming, and we have your contact information.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can put on our website. That's great.
Okay. Well, thank you again for having me, and enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Take care.
Under new business, we have a number of items under new business tonight. First one, item letter A, request from the Grind for the Garden Project. We have Ms. Sorio here tonight in replacement for Mr. Hutton. Welcome, Ms. Sorio.
Good evening. So a request has been received from the Grind to initiate a garden project with the stated primary goal being to provide fresh vegetables to their homeless clients. According to the Grind's request, the proposed garden project would be maintained on leveled ground at the front entrance of their coffee house and would consist of 6 planters that were donated by Fellows High School students. The leveled ground would be on the patio that the Grind wishes to remain and would then accommodate those 6 planters. As you remember, the Parks and Recreation Committee at its June 20th meeting directed staff to inform them to have the patio removed. The Grind's location at 273 Victoria Street is zoned institutional, and the use of a garden would be considered accessory to the primary use, and the primary use being permitted is in does not have a zoning contravention. It would be meeting the requirements of the zoning bylaw. And the planters would not be defined as a commercial greenhouse, so this proposal would not be in contravention of the city's zoning bylaw. So committee direction is required to provide direction on the 6 planters on the patio, which they're considering the leveled ground. So I'm awaiting your direction.
Discussion, motions, Councillor Keel.
So I guess this is round 2 on the patio. We instructed staff at the last meeting to remove the patio. I'm not changing my mind on that, nor am I going to support any motion to reconsider that. They do not lease any space outside of the grind. I will repeat, they do not lease any space outside of the grind. The answer is no the last time, my answer is no this time. Not to mention the fact that these planters are already there, and I got to tell you, well, not you, Ms. Sorio, but I got to say to anybody coming forward in the city, I'm not a beg for forgiveness instead of asking permission kind of person. So I also have quite a disrespect for the fact that this was already done without our permission. And then I'm assuming they, after we said no to the patio the last time, they sort of seemed to hurriedly bring this request back to us. Big no. Big no.
Mayor Gervais, then we have Councillor Giacono.
Thank you. A question and then a comment. A question for Ms. Sorio. I'm going by memory. About 2 or 3 years ago, my recollection is someone on Main Street made a request to the city of Pembroke to allow some sort of raised, I can't say it's that configuration, but some sort of raised bed on a sidewalk, as I recall it. So I'm wondering if you can, that's the first part, if you can jog my memory so that I can
Sure.
figure
So,
that part out.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. That was in June of 2020. There was an encroachment agreement signed between Studio Dreamshare and the city to allow 2 raised planters so that they could be located in front of 18 Pembroke Street West. And they were to have plants in there, and I believe they did it for 1 year, and then they didn't continue it, but they do have an encroachment agreement for those 2 planters.
So then, in terms of the comment, it just I recognize what's being said in terms of I'm laughing because I can still hear Councillor O'Neill talking about doing things and asking for forgiveness and so forth. But in any event, if council was of a mind to allow the raised beds, it sounds like there's an encroachment agreement that you can do to allow it to be on city property, not in the in a leased area, but just on, I think it was on a sidewalk last time. But in any event.
Councillor Giacono.
Deputy Mayor, I have to agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Keel in his opinion. I believe he's correct. I know what the grind is trying to do. They're trying to provide some therapeutic, diversion for folks who may need it. We have a community garden at present located within the area. Secondarily, there it is. Nobody came forward and said, we'd like you to consider this, or, we know the patio doesn't meet your purposes. What about this? We could provide some therapeutic services. But nobody came. Nobody said, we'd like to do that. And I mean, as a council, we have the right either accept, reject, or whatever. But I mean, I love the photos. I mean, somebody's gone to a lot of work. I mean, building these boxes, right, Mayor and Deputy Mayor, you know what it is all about. You guys have built these boxes for the community garden. I think there has to be some consideration that the ultimate authority for granting certain things rests with the community, the city, and this council. And they're putting us in a kind of a very precarious position to make us look like, well, we're the bad ogres that are shooting down the poor people that need something to do. Well, I think what they should be doing is perhaps arranging to have a small bus that takes these folks to the community garden that's already in existence, show them, how to weed, or maybe get involved with gardening and change their, their ideals on life a little bit. Winston Churchill, who was, a tremendous gardener, got his greatest ideas when he was out digging in the garden or planting roses. He said it was therapeutic. He said that there were certain things in the soil that made you feel better. And I mean, that's a scientific fact. When you have your hands in the dirt, there's some sort of reaction on your immune system. You're healthier. That's why farmers, I think, live a long time. If, you know, they don't kill the milking cows or whatever, they live. They're associated with the land. I'm against it. I think they have to have some respect for us and for the idea that they just can't go carte blanche and say, okay, we're not going to have a patio, we're going to have a garden. So now if the garden disappears, this little projected garden, is there going to be a rose bush there, rose bush plant, or, you know, or a nursery? Where does it end? I think there's got to be some better communication. I agree with Councillor Keel. I'm going to shut my trap. Thank you.
Councillor Purcell, then we have Councillor Frenier.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have the same opinion in regards to removing these planters. Typically what happens is, and we know that we've had some loitering issues in terms of after hours in that area, these become seats very quickly. And we already have some concerns and from around that area with neighbors. And I think it's just not appropriate. Again, if that's the case, I wholeheartedly agree that we can, provide them space in the Carrefour Community Garden to grow those vegetables, but I don't think that that's a good appropriate space for that. And I think it's just going to cause us more issues down the road, at least for those residents in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Frenier?
I have to reiterate what Councillor Purcell said. That is my concern. I see what they're trying to do by providing this, space just outside. But they provide serious services inside the building, and that should be their primary focus, especially now they're expanding their boundary outdoors to provide a service. And we know that the climate right now is not conducive to that. So I think they should be working on what they're doing right and then not expanding into the exterior of the building, because I agree, they're going to become seats. And they will continue, they'll be used as a patio, and maybe they'll be putting their cigarette butts out in the plants. And I hate to say that, but I mean, I see what they're saying, but I agree that they should have came to us first and give us an opportunity to discuss it at least. Thank you.
Councillor Giacono?
Deputy Mayor, in your role as working with the community gardens, does the Grind have any input? Do they have any flowering vegetables there? Do they participate in any way? Or could these boxes somehow be incorporated there for them to use and to, rather, I mean, somebody's gone to a lot of work and you hate to see it, dumped and junked, when in fact it could perhaps be moved there and be used. I know you're always looking to build new beds and
Yes.
is there any interaction at present with the Grind?
Well, the mayor and I were talking this week about this item on the agenda, and right now we had 2 new raised garden beds made by a local contractor, and they're rather huge. And one is designated for the St. Joseph's Food Bank. Members will come and garden. The other one is available, and we would like to offer it to the Grind to use. These boxes from Fellows High School are exceptional. They don't hold many plants though, but we were fortunate to have 4 or 5 of them donated from Fellows last year, which we put at the end of the existing food bank gardens that we have. We have 3 food bank gardens and a large garden. So these could be transported also in the Grind's van, maybe. The Grind have a van. They're very heavy, though, with the soil in them. So the soil will have to be taken out, and they could be placed at the community garden. But the Grind is welcome to use this raised garden bed that we have. I can provide staff with a picture tomorrow. And I did when we started the community garden 4 years ago. Jerry Novak and Deacon Adrian and I were talking with the mayor, and at that time they weren't ready because they did not have, they were very busy getting their premises set up, and they thought transportation would be an issue. But now they have that van, so I'm not speaking for the Grind, but maybe they could provide transportation to their clients, just like the youth hub do. The youth hub come to the garden twice a week with their youth. So there is a raised garden bed available, and then these could also be incorporated. I don't think Carrefour would mind adding that footprint. Any further discussion? So does that provide enough info?
I hear the direction. The direction is no to the planters and no to the patio again.
And did you want to
And I'll indicate to them that there's the option of contacting you.
contact myself or the mayor?
Or the mayor,
co-chair of
okay,
the
in
committee?
regards to.
We're co-chairs of the community garden.
Yeah, regards to community
Yeah.
garden. Yep, okay.
Thank you.
I have that.
Next item, Ms. Soriol, is the parking area for the grind.
So staff was tasked to do a parking plan for the area, which includes the senior center parking, the grind parking, and public parking. And so the operations department staff have designed a parking plan for the front of the grind. And that plan, which is attached in your agenda packages, shows 9 parking spaces plus 1 accessible parking space for a total of 10 that can be accommodated in front of the grind's building. So the lease that the sign between the city and the grind indicates that the grind shall be entitled for up to 5 parking spaces. As you know, the grind offers a variety of services, and based on their services offered, they have many volunteers, professional staff, and clients on site on a daily basis. Does the committee wish to assign more parking spaces to the grind, or provide the additional spaces above the required 5 as public parking? The additional public parking spaces could be used by either the seniors center or people or the guests of the neighbors of the area, or it could be used by users of the grind. It would be on a first come, first served basis. So they would all be lined and signed. So if you chose to keep the 5 parking spaces for the grind, they would be signed as the grind parking, and then the additional 5 would be signed as public parking. And we can move that accessible parking space as well. That was just a draft plan, but that plan, we could move the accessible space closer to the edge of the back of the senior center, so it's closer to people to use that accessible space for the senior center, or it's closer to the door where the services are offered for the grind. So that can be changed. So as part of the lease for the Pembroke 50 Plus Active Living Center, they have to have 15 parking spaces. And if you've been by there recently, you'll see that those have been lined, and there's some additional parking that's public parking that would be in front of the Bell Building. And those will all be signed once I get the direction here this evening. There will also be a no parking sign installed on the accessory building so as to alleviate parking onto the Isabella Street or road allowance. And this is causing neighbors issues with trying to back out of their driveways, so then at least we would have that sign there. So the cost to line the grind's parking area is approximately $265 plus HST. So I'm just seeking your direction this evening.
Motions or discussion? I have Councillor Keel and then Councillor Purcell, and then the mayor. Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to, probably no surprise to anybody, I'm going to stick to they get 5 in the lease, so I'm going to suggest that they get 5 dedicated spots. I do want to reiterate what you said, Ms. Soriol, that the other parking spots, of course, can be used by members of the grind, potentially people attending the library, seniors. So I think for me this is a rather easy one. We give them their 5 dedicated spots per the lease, and the other ones are public for use by anyone in the area, including potential grind members. I personally like where you have the current barrier-free parking spot, as it is closer to the 50-plus drop-in center. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Sorio, for your report. There's a couple things that first of all, the senior parking, the signs off the back of the building. So that disappeared on the back of the grind in regards to the senior parking. I'd sent along an email recording associated with that being missing. I like the accessibility spot. Is it not better also to incorporate an accessibility spot right at the seniors parking, right towards the grassy knoll? Because that's really the closest entrance to the 50-plus center for individuals to access. And I would agree, maintain the 5 spots and the rest would be public access parking. But I could see another accessibility spot. I don't know if this kind of goes through the accessibility committee, these types of requests as well. I know that there's a meeting coming up on the 31st as well, so, yeah, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Soriot?
Through you, yes, we can look at the one accessible space by the grassy knoll. There's also 3 handicap or accessible parking spaces in front of the senior center. Now, they are public, so they could be used by somebody going to the library or somebody going downtown or whatever, but there are 3 right in front of the building as well. And I can look at definitely, and, yeah, yeah. And there is, sorry, one more thing, there is signage. It's brand new, and it's, because the other ones are really faded and now they're gone. Okay, so, and I'm just, everything is ready to roll. I just need direction here this evening, and then we'll get those signs up, and we'll get the lines done in front of the grind.
Mayor Gervais, and then we have Councillor Frenier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So last evening, I had the benefit of attending a barbecue appreciation event for the wrap-up of the coldest night of the year, 2023. Our member of provincial parliament, member of parliament was invited, brought greetings, and recognized the work of the grind. The city of Pembroke was recognized for our assistance in respect to the 2023 coldest night of the year. So too was a lot of individuals being recognized for their teams that they had entered, but also the different individuals that donated funds. It was announced last night that more than $107,000 was raised from our community, not just the city of Pembroke, but our entire community, towards the work, the mandate, if you will, of what the grind has been doing. That's huge, in my opinion. I've assisted, and I know a number of us around the table do different charitable work with different organizations. I know that through the museum, through the Handy Bus and so forth, one single event raising more than $107,000 is huge, that it came out of our community for this particular fundraising effort to try and assist the grind with the work that they do. So with that as a backdrop, we have received the report from Ms. Soriot talking about the seniors center, and we have the grind, because that's the only 2 tenants that are in this particular building. The seniors active living center has 15 parking spots, and at the time, in terms of this lease, there was 5 spots in respect to the grind. From what I can gather from the various meetings that keep happening in terms of discussions about the grind, is comments being made that certain individuals that are attending the grind are actually parking in the seniors parking. So at least, you know, by lining things, at least we're going to have some delineation in terms of where people are parking and hopefully maximizing the area. I thank staff for putting up no parking signage along Isabella Street where it should have been, but there were certain signage that was missing. So now that's in the appropriate spots to try and address where people should not be parking and should not be parking on our sidewalks and so forth. So I do appreciate that. But I come back to, this is an organization that the public has rallied behind to a tune of over $107,000 in a singular event, which they put forward last night that this coming year that they're going to try and beat the $107,000. So if the community can rally behind this particular organization to a tune of $107,000, I don't know why the city cannot rally behind them to provide additional parking dedicated to the grind. As I say, the seniors have 15, the grind has 5. There's allegations of people parking where they shouldn't be parking and parking in the parking spots for the seniors and so forth. So with that backdrop, I really challenge this council to think about it. So if I'm going to get a seconder for this motion, I will be asking for a recorded vote, but I would be moving that the 10 spots as articulated in this report be allocated for the purposes of the grind with the configuration that's in this report.
So we have a motion on the floor, seconder, Councillor Frenier. Okay, and you were up next to speak.
So basically, the mayor has expressed my sentiments. What I was going to say was, I don't want us to lose sight of the great work that the grind is doing. We certainly do have some wrinkles, and especially in the past, like with the warming center and that. We do have some wrinkles to iron out with the organization, but let's not lose sight of the great work that they're doing. Okay, so I support the parking. We have a lot of people that use that building, and not just the clients, the workers that go there. And I know every time I've had to go, I've had to scurry to try to find a parking spot. And now if we're taking away the parking in that lane in front of the auxiliary building or accessory building, we're going to be limiting them even more. So I would hate to create another wrinkle, again, is what I'm saying, is by limiting them to 5 parking spaces and not allowing them more, I think we're looking for more complaints to come in about where they're parking. And so I would like to see them, and that's why I'm supporting the motion. I think that they, do need the parking, and that's it. That's it.
Thank you. So we have Councillor Purcell and then Councillor Giacono.
Thank you, Chair. And I can appreciate the mayor's comments, and I saw on social media that he also liked the post in terms of the barbecue, where it stated that it's the only shelter between Ottawa and North Bay. This is why I've asked to have a shelter warming station, cooling station, drop-in center bylaw be drafted. So that way we set clear ground rules in regards to the operation of these services within our community. I think that's the right way to go. I inquired about it today. I hope it's still on the agenda. I think it was agreed to in closed meeting. So these are the types of things that I think that we need to look at. And it's not that I'm against the grind in regards to the operations. I commend them for what they do. In fact, we had a barbecue last Friday night, and before Canada Day, we had about 570 wieners left over and 570 hot dogs. I sent a note to say to the grind, are you interested in these? And also St. Joseph's Food Bank. St. Joseph's Food Bank got back to us. We provided that donation on behalf of the city. So, I mean, these things are really, really important, but the problem is that they need to be more forthcoming in regards to asking instead of, just requesting these things without prior knowledge, without talking to the neighbors, without informing individuals in terms of what they're requesting. And I think, we had them here doing a presentation. They clearly state, and if you look under their homeless supports, the grind is not a shelter. The grind is not a shelter. The grind is not a shelter. Let's stop calling it a shelter. Let's read the stuff before we like it, because it's not a shelter. So that's all I have to say.
Councillor Giacono.
Deputy Mayor, I'm kind of siding with the mayor on this one. Availability to parking is really important in any community. My concern is that perhaps some of them, not all of them, some of them should be designated to the grind, and the others to public parking where people can go to the library or seniors can use the parking, divvy it up, And I mean, if you're a senior and you're in a walker, you got a walker in your back of your car, and you got to walk from the far end, it's a lot more conducive to have it a little closer to the shelter. Not to the shelter. Now you got me talking shelter. Sorry, I apologize for that, Councillor Purcell. But divvy it up. Like, does it all have to be 10? Last year I was there and I helped give out some meals at the grind. And the lady in the kitchen was complaining. She said, you know, I had to park at the marina. She said to come up here to volunteer my time to work in the kitchen. She wasn't really complaining, but she was stating a fact. And I said, here's a person that's here, you know, a couple days a week, giving up her time. She's got to walk a half a mile to do that. So, I mean, that type of person should have access to a parking spot there at the grind. And whether they're designated as a grind parking spot with a sign or even on painted on the painted on the ground, and if they're, and come up with a sticker system, give them a sticker. Say, you know, you're a grind, and if somebody's, not complying to that, then you have your bylaw enforcement people charge them. Simple as that. But I kind of like the idea of additional parking, and I know you brought this forward with, looking at it in a sort of a nonpartisan way, what would be best for the community. And I really feel that thing sticks in my mind about the lady walking from the marina to the top of the hill. We were keeping I told her we were keeping her in shape, but she didn't really find that too amusing. But anyway, thank you. I would kind of agree with the parking, but divvy it up, come up with a system.
Thank you, Councillor Giacono. Councillor Keel.
So I think, let's be clear. I don't think anybody around this table, including when the grind was in here the last time, has any problems with what they're doing inside of the building. They are fulfilling a very needed cause. To a degree, the problem is their attitude and their lack of neighborliness, I suppose. When Mr. Novak was in here I think it was back in February, and he told us, well, we don't deal with the outside. Well, to be fair, that's probably why he lost a patio. Because that turned me, when I saw the thing about the patio at our last meeting, I couldn't have thought quicker to him saying, we don't control the outside. So I think the fact that their lease gives them 5 spots, and Councillor Lafreniere said, they shouldn't be limited to 5. Well, they wouldn't be. If they have 5 dedicated spots, they're given the 5 spots that they have according to their lease, and then we would have, how many spots total were there, Ms. Oriel? 10?
Yes, there'd be 10.
So there would be another 5 spots that could be used by people attending the grind, or people attending the library, or people attending the senior center. And I think if the grind is looking for more, whether it's with respect to the patio, whether it's an encroachment agreement, if the grind's looking for more, then what they should be coming to us is a request to renegotiate their lease. And I'll say this partly with my lawyer hat on. If they want to renegotiate their lease, I would be happy to sit down with them and have those discussions. But the current way that they're going about it, that's why I have the problem that I do. Has nothing to do with their inside job. It has to do with the way that they're approaching their neighbors, to a degree the way they're approaching City Hall. If they want to talk about more, then let's talk about more, but let's have those actual conversations with the parameters of negotiations, as opposed to these one-off either requests or these one-off impositions. So that's the way that I'm looking at it, is if they want to have a more fuller discussion, I would be more than happy to have it. And perhaps some other members of this council would be more than happy to look at the bigger picture than these one-offs. But that's the reason I won't be supporting the mayor's motion, because I would rather see them get their 5, and then the other ones be available to the public, including grind patrons.
So if I could speak from the chair, and then we'll call the vote, recorded vote. So I had concerns about the extra parking spaces, because it is a very congested area there. If you go down there at lunchtime when they're very busy, you'll see people parking all over the place. But I was speaking with members of the Active Living Center, and sometimes they have 40 members at activity, so where do they park? So I would support a shared 4 extra public parking and the 1 accessible public. That's what I'm going to be supporting. So the mayor has requested a recorded vote. Mr. Unruh?
Yep.
Can you read
so-
the motion?
So the motion is that the combined committee approve an extra 5 parking spaces, including 1 accessible parking space, be assigned to the grind as presented. And so recorded vote, Deputy Mayor Brian Abdallah,
Nay.
Councillor Ed Jacquino,
Yes.
Councillor Ian Keel,
Nay.
Councillor Pat Lafreniere,
Yes.
Councillor Andrew Palmer is absent, Councillor Troy Purcell,
Nay.
and sorry about that, Mayor Ron Gervais.
Yea.
Okay. So it's 3 yay and 3 nay, so it's a tied vote, so the motion does not pass.
Do we have another motion on the floor? Councillor Keel?
I move that the grind be permitted 5 parking spots and that the other 4 regular parking spots and accessible parking spot be public parking spots.
Councillor Jacquino?
Second that, Deputy Mayor.
Okay.
I call the
Councillor
question.
I was going to do that, but that's okay. Any discussion? Okay, call the question. Sorry. Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Okay. Okay, thank you, Ms. Sorio. Next up, we have our treasurer, Ms. Lochte, who has come here on her holidays. It just shows you the dedication of our wonderful city staff. Welcome. And you're going to be talking about the budget timeline.
Thank you. Presented in the report tonight, staff have prepared 2 options for the 2024 budget schedule. So the details are enclosed in my report. To summarize them, option 1 schedule reflects the city's typical budget timeline. So proposed deliberation dates under option 1 would be 3 days of deliberations scheduled for January 15th, 17th, and 19th, with both a public meeting and budget passing scheduled for the first council meeting of February. Option 2 reflects a separate public meeting scheduled for the second council meeting in January. So under this scenario, we would be splitting council deliberations into 2 separate sessions. So we would do day 1 and day 2 deliberations at the beginning of January, January 4th and 5th. We would hold a public meeting January 16th at the beginning of the regularly scheduled council meeting, where a report on the draft budget to date would be presented. We would follow that up with a 3rd day of deliberations on February 2nd. And then under this schedule, the budget would pass the 2nd meeting of council in February. So this revised approach would allow for consideration of public input before finalization and passing of the budget. So at this time, staff is seeking direction on the 2 options presented and what would be preferred by council. Thank you.
Councillor Keel and then Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I just have a couple questions to help me decide. The first one is, does staff have a preference? I suppose I should set out from the beginning, I like the idea of having some more public transparency. That when we push through the budget in 1 week, it doesn't necessarily allow the public to sort of take in what we're presenting and give them much time to discuss it. And I know I was speaking with one former candidate who did not get elected, who I guess was expressing interest in seeing the budget, but I guess couldn't be shown the budget until we were dealing with the budget. And so that person in particular felt that there was a lack of public input. So I like the public input, but I also see that it pushes things at both ends. It starts things a little sooner for you and the department heads, and it also means that the final vote is a little later. So I'm wondering if that causes any concerns, even though I like very much having the public, the more public transparency.
So through the chair, in previous years, the city has passed the budget the second meeting in February. It's only been recently that we've been able to condense the schedule to try to push it a council meeting earlier. So, I mean, there's always a benefit to trying to pass the budget as soon as possible so that we can start issuing tenders for construction projects. So I certainly wouldn't want to see the budget being passed any later than the second meeting in February. But really, we're just proposing option 2, to have that better separation between deliberations and, presenting the information to the public.
In that case, I think I would like the second option then, because of the public element.
Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think option 2 would be more beneficial. Again, just in terms of, you've probably heard me talk about transparency and accountability. Transparency piece, just making sure that we have that buy-in. And let's face it, we have some difficult challenges coming ahead of us, right? We have a lot of activities underway. We want that input from our residents in regards to where we're going to go. Because there's getting to a point where we need to decide what we're going to be good at and what we're not going to be good at, what we're going to drop. Just because the sheer cost of everything is going up. We have a lot of major projects that are underway, and I think it's just an opportunity, again, just to provide a little bit more direction and information to the residents in regards to some of the challenges that we have when it comes to budgeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Giacono.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've always thought we have been transparent. I think some of the issue is timeline, getting it together. Perhaps the meetings, the public meetings, I mean, we're meeting during the day. Most people are working during the day. So how do they have their say? They either get online, and of course, we're pushing it all through to try and get it approved, because we have a provincial mandate as well to supply the figures and the numbers and come up with a balanced budget. So perhaps, we should be looking at maybe scheduling it maybe from 3 to 8, or I'm just saying, I know we have enough meetings as it is, and doing it during the day is sort of accommodating to us, but it's not really accommodating to the fellow that's in the workforce working every day 9 to 5, and he'd say, geez, I really would have liked to have come, but I can't come during the day. I'm just wondering if that would be something for consideration. But I like the secondary part as well, and maybe look at time frame. It may not suit. We may have to keep it the way it is.
Did you want to comment on that?
Well, I could certainly discuss between council and staff to see availability of starting it, instead of starting it in the morning, to do an afternoon to evening type schedule for the deliberation meeting. So I could certainly come back to council with that.
Yes, Councillor Giacono.
If that doesn't work, can we have it on your vacation? I don't think that would work very well, but it's obviously it's working. Thank you for being here.
Councillor Frenier.
So just to go over it, option 2 would mean we meet on the 4th and 5th of January. The public meeting is on the 16th with a council meeting. We review it again, taking in the public feedback on the 2nd of February and adopt it on the 20th of February, right? Okay. I'm in favor of that. Public meeting, would that only be at that 16th meeting? Because there's not a lot of opportunity for individuals. They would come to the meeting, they would see the presentation, and then they'd have 4 days to give us the information and try to... No, sorry, that's the 16th of January. So it'd give us a couple of weeks to try to... But council's not getting together until the 2nd again. We would deliberate that, right? I'm just wondering if that's enough for a public meeting, that's all. That's my comment.
So through the chair, I mean, I would say, this is a suggested timeline. I mean, there may be additional ways to improve it, but it was just trying to try to find a way to make a compromise between getting it passed at the end of February, still giving staff enough time to put presentations together with information. So the goal of the first 2 days of deliberation is they'd still be open to the public, but we wouldn't discuss the taxation impacts. We would just be discussing the operating budgets of the different departments. And then we would be bringing forward sort of where we're at in draft form, giving the public an opportunity to comment either before or after, and then incorporating that feedback if we receive any into the February 2nd meeting. So the February 2nd meeting would be to discuss any feedback, written or otherwise, received during that time period. We would also, at that time, have the PBIA and the library present their information, and then, adopt, a final draft to bring forward to council, is the thought process.
I just, one final comment. I just think in my preference, I'd rather see, instead of have the public meeting combined with a council meeting, because we know how our council meetings have been lately, like long, and that's fine. But I would rather see maybe the public meeting as a separate meeting where we're all coming in, maybe on the 9th. So we would have an extra meeting that month. We'd come on the 9th. It wouldn't be a formal council meeting. It would be a specific public meeting to present. I would rather keep it separate than the council meeting, and that's all my preference. So I would say the public meeting on the 9th. Then on the 16th, we have a regular council meeting, but there's a little more time for people to digest the information and get back to us. So that would be my only preference.
Councillor Keel and then the Mayor Gervais.
I'm going to completely agree with Councillor Lafreniere's last comment. That's not why I was going to speak, but I really like that. And if we did have some engaged people in here, the time, I also don't want to invite them to something and then cut them off and say, sorry, we have to get down to our council business.
Yeah.
Thanks for showing up, but bugger off. My question was actually, I'm not sure who I'm asking it to, whether it's you, Ms. Lochte, or the CAO. This last time around, we did not video our budget deliberations, but I thought of that as Councillor Giacono was talking about how people work during the day, and I'm wondering if that could alleviate that concern as well if we also were to record those daytime budget meetings, so they would have time, if they were interested residents, they would have time to review that on their own time, then they could come to our public meeting. And I think maybe we're sort of having a good brainstorming session here, but I don't know who that question about recording them should properly go to.
Yeah, well, yeah, certainly it's one thing that we can take a look at in regards to the logistics. I don't think it'd be hard to deal with. So, something we can look at with staff and then come back to council.
Thank you. So we have Mayor Gervais.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to say that I echo what the sentiments are, that the public meeting would be a separate meeting, and I'm curious to see what interest there would be after we do it for 1 year, because I know that for a number of years there's Mr. Halkett would sit at the back, but outside of Mr. Halkett, I don't know in the internet world who's watching, but the only individual I would see attend is Mr. Halkett. So, but it's not to take away that it's important to have this public element component, and I agree with Councillor Lafreniere that it would be on a separate meeting, so it gives the attention it deserves.
Great. Thank you. So I prefer option 2 with some of the suggestions that the treasurer and the staff can look into. Does that give you enough in a direction information to work with?
So I take it that council would like to move forward with a modified option 2. So what I can do is have a discussion with staff about the public meeting date itself, as well as the time, the time of day to conduct the 3 days of deliberation, and then bring that part back to council again. Is
Okay.
that the correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Thank you. Next item, unaudited 2022 financial results.
Thank you. So based on the city's unaudited financial results using the cash basis of reporting, the city is expecting to end the 2022 fiscal year with an accumulated surplus in the general fund in the amount of $1.1 million. So of this amount, about $508,000 is related to additional interest income the city has earned as a result of inflation pushing interest rates significantly higher than budget last year. So without this unexpected additional revenue, the surplus would be $616,000, which is certainly more in line with historical year-end results and represents roughly 1.8% of the total city budget of $34.4 million operating budget. So this surplus is net of previously approved transfers to and from reserves, which will follow as a resolution later tonight, as well as a carry forward of $218,000 of project funding carrying forward from the 2022 to the 2023 operating budget. And this surplus also reflects the 2022 impact of COVID-19. So in 2022, the city did incur a net loss due to COVID of $202,000. And this breaks down to about $180,000 in lost revenue, about $25,000, almost $26,000 in additional costs incurred by the city related to COVID-19, offset by a small amount of operating savings of roughly $4,000. So this net loss was funded by Safe Restart funding that the city received several years ago from the province. And so the balance of this funding carrying forward to 2023 is $90,396. So before we talk about the general surplus and the distribution of that to reserves, I did just want to touch on the results of the water fund and the sewer fund. So in terms of the water fund, the city is expecting to end the 2022 fiscal year with no accumulated surplus in the water fund due to additional staffing undertaken during the year. And as required, water and sewer funds must remain separate, and any surplus must be transferred to the Waterworks Capital Reserve when required. In terms of the sewer fund, the city is expecting to end the 2022 fiscal year with an accumulated surplus in the sewer fund in the amount of $324,195.03. So again, as required, the surplus was transferred to the PCC Capital Reserve of $318,000 and change, as well as the Storm Sewer Industrial Park Reserve for revenues received for that purpose of $5,260.34. So going back to the operating surplus of $1.1 million, at this point in time in the year, staff typically seek direction from council on the allocation of this surplus to reserves. So our past practice has been to allocate it to the General Capital Reserve. Over the past several years, we have been making allocations to the Aquatic Center Reserve to help fund that project and reduce the amount of debt that the city will have to incur, once we decide to undertake that project. But certainly this year, and looking at the reserves as a whole, what's missing from the city's suite of reserves is something that addresses the city's emergency and disaster recovery. So currently, when an emergency occurs in the city, outside funding may be available to the city from the province, but it's subject to the 3% rule, and that's 3% of the city's tax levy, essentially. So if the cost of responding to and recovering from an emergency is less than 3% of the city's tax revenues, then the city has to pay for the emergency in its entirety. Once it hits that threshold and exceeds that 3%, then outside funding is available from the province's Municipal Disaster Recovery Assistance Program, or MDRA, on a cost-sharing basis. with more funding being available to the city, above the 3%. So currently, no reserve funding exists to cover this 3%. And certainly, an emergency is already stressful enough without having to worry about where's the money going to come from and have it be something that's unfinanced in the city's finances. And the cost to respond and recover from an emergency can include our sandbagging operations, our Red Cross support, the disposition of sandbags, debris collection and pickup, as well as unplanned repairs of infrastructure, which is usually where the significant costs come into play. So city staff are asking council to consider the creation of a new emergency disaster recovery reserve. And this would ensure that sufficient funding is available to fund the municipal portion of disaster relief. Currently, 3% based on the city's 2021 numbers would equal $687,668. So in my recommendation, I have proposed to allocate the bulk of the unexpected revenues from interest into the emergency and disaster recovery reserve. Certainly if council was supportive of the concept in general, but wanted to, perhaps put less money into this reserve and sort of build it over time and put more money into the general capital reserve this year, that's certainly a consideration. But the staff proposal at this time is to allocate $537,668 to a new emergency reserve, to continue to allocate $250,000 into the aquatic center reserve, and to place the remaining balance of our proposed accumulated surplus into the general capital reserve, which is currently estimated at $337,330. So at this time, just looking for feedback from committee on the disposition of these surplus funds. Thank you.
We have Mayor Gervais.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I can think back to whenever we didn't have a general capital reserve, we'd have a surplus, and then sometimes it would be a matter of trying to determine what project maybe it might get used on, because let's face it, there was always a capital project that needed to be done. And it was thought at the time, and I certainly support it and continue to support it, let's have a general capital reserve, let's put the money in there, because let's face it, every project, we look at our agenda and we see how everything costs millions to do. That's what it takes to run the city of Pembroke. So every time we do a project, we try our best to estimate what the cost of the project will be, and often, not always, but often there's overruns, there's things that go on, there's unexpected situations whenever we're trying to redo Nelson Street or Lake Street, and we find out that there's, or other things where we find fuel tanks and other things in the ground that we didn't anticipate. So the general capital reserve to me was fiscally responsible then, it still is now. I know that as a council, we are dedicated towards developing this aquatic center, and so that makes sense having funds there. But it's not lost on me. I know that Councillor Plummer and I have numerous conversations with the Director of Operations in terms of the climate invoked or climate caused issues. We've got pavement that elevates right off of Angus Campbell because we have a downpour and the system can't handle it. We have culverts that can't handle water, and it goes into different people's yards and so forth. And so there just is an ongoing deluge of problems caused by climate change, and I get that. And so kudos to staff for saying, okay, so let's not just use the money for this, let's try and develop a reserve that we can address this particular issue, because to my recollection, 2019 was about as worst as, at least that I've seen so far. It's probably going to get worse, but anyways, 2019, worst that I've ever seen, and I don't recall being even able to hit the 3%. In other words, we didn't get any assistance from the province. So if we don't have the money, where are you getting the monies? And our operating budgets can only absorb so much, and if you don't have it there, where do you have it? So kudos to staff for saying, well, let's have a reserve in terms of this emergency disaster. I understand it. I appreciate staff doing that. I appreciate the aquatics one and the general reserve. If anything, based upon what our Madam Treasurer is saying, I was thinking building this emergency disaster recovery reserve over time, lowering it somewhat to put more in the general capital reserve, because I got to tell you, like, so it's in here in the report in terms of what is in the general capital reserve, but it doesn't take much to tap on that budget to try and address one of the projects that we're doing that there's cost overruns and what have you, and then before you know it, there's not very much there. So I'm always protective of that general capital reserve, just because I know from the operations perspective how much things cost. So I guess from my vantage point, I'm supportive of everything that is being said by Madam Treasurer. It's just that if we were going to reduce something, it would be the emergency disaster one by 100,000 or 200,000, putting it in the general capital reserve. It's not that it's disappearing. It's not that it's getting, spent or what have you. We still have control over it, but at least we know that it's in this general capital reserve for what costs us the most, which is to renew our infrastructure, and it's just ongoing. Like this year, we know it. We have Nelson Street, we have Pembroke Street West, we have Boundary Road. Like it just, Boundary Road's on here this later tonight. Like they're millions of dollars. So that's my vantage point. If there is any deviation from what Madam Treasurer is putting forward as a plan for our benefit, is to somewhat lower the emergency disaster recovery reserve and putting it into the general capital reserve. But I like what Madam Treasurer is doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keel.
I thought there were others before me. I'm certainly this one, as the treasurer knows, I spoke to her this afternoon about this because I was trying to grapple. This is obviously the first time that I'm experiencing the accumulated surplus and what to do with it, and I guess it would be Councillor Purcell's first time as well. I'm in agreement with the mayor, and I did talk to the treasurer about whether or not we needed the full 537 into the emergency fund, and as she stated earlier in her comments, she said that we could instead grow that over time and open up some of that. So my personal thought was that we reduce that 537 down to 250, and that we look at this as a multi-year stepping stone. There's some other projects, and there's some other there's some other things, and I know everything pulls at everybody's attention, and I know Councillor Lafreniere said, there's lots of things to do, but you need to pay for them, and that's the reality. Some of our we know from looking at some of our ongoing planning, for instance, that Parks and Rec has a lot of buildings. They have a lot of hard, they have a lot of hard capital. I would like to see $50,000 transferred into the Parks and Rec Reserve so that we continue to build that up. And I know in speaking with Mr. DeRoche, if we were to ever lose, and knocking on wood here, if we were to ever suddenly lose one of our rinks, that's not going to be a $50,000 fix. That could be $1 million fix. And how could we possibly lose one of our rinks? I mean, this is, I don't want to make light of it. Yes, we're Hockey Town Canada, but those are huge things that, frankly, our residents expect us to keep up and running. So I would also, I'd like to lower and I'm not going to make a motion yet. I honestly want to hear from everyone, in particular Councillor Lafreniere and Councillor Giacono as two of our more senior councillors. I'm really looking forward to hearing their thoughts. But I would reduce the emergency transfer down to 250. I would like to see a $50,000 increase to our Parks and Rec. And the other thing we have sort of coming down the pipeline, and unfortunately timing just didn't work out, but is our transit strategy. And I know in speaking with the deputy mayor, and I hope he'll speak from the chair when he can, that there's extra money being looked at for that, and I would be in favor of that. But at this time, those are my comments, and I look forward to hearing from the other councillors.
Councillor Purcell and then Councillor Frenier.
Thank you, Chair. I do think it's really, really important that we do have, working towards that 3% in terms of, emergency disaster fund. I think that that's really, really important. That being said, I like the strategy in terms of building that over time. We didn't have it in the past, but at least then we have some dollars there right now to start. And I do believe that, we do have those couple big projects underway. Well, more than that, but I mean, there's, in terms of the transit, I do agree, in terms of the 150,000 at the transit reserve, and then, $50,000 to the Parks and Rec. I could tell you, I was looking at some of our facilities and inquired about some of the status in terms of our facilities that Parks and Recs looked after, and, we're behind in regards to some of the maintenance that has to occur on those things and improvements. So I think that's really, really important that we look at that $50,000 towards Parks and Rec for that purpose, as they deal with pretty much all the facilities and ownership of the facilities. So I do think that that's important, and I do say kudos. Anytime that we have an emergency or disaster, it's correct. The last thing you want to be worrying about is in terms of where you're going to pull the dollars from. I hear you. But if we could start building that reserve over time, I think that's the best approach. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Frenier, then Councillor Giacono.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything I'm hearing, specifically the rec capital. As Councillor Keel said, we have facilities that need work, and if something goes, what are we going to do? We're talking about building a new pool. Would we turn our back on the pool once it's built and needed repairs? We probably wouldn't, but we have other facilities that we also need to keep up. So that being said, I would support that emergency and disaster being reduced to $250, 50 of it going to the rec capital after that, so that's a total of 300, and then 150 to transit would leave another $87,668 to go back into the general, capital general reserve. So I would support that. Yeah. Good.
Councillor Giacono. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Some sage suggestions from the new members of council.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. And, when you're around for a long time, sometimes you have channel vision, but it's good to have fresh, new perspectives. And I think that you influence that around this council table, and I really appreciate that. I agree with everything that's been said. I have a question. In the old days, I don't know if it still exists, maybe now, contingency fund. Do we have a contingency fund? Where does that come from? Does it come from this general account? Because, whenever we had a problem, there was always, well, let's just take it out of the contingency fund. And as I was explaining it tonight on the way in to Councillor Keel, I always thought a contingency fund was the cookie jar that Mom always had in the cupboard. And when Dad came home and said, we can't pay the hydro because I got laid off, Mom said, well, by the way, I have this contingency fund, what she had put together. So do we still have a policy on establishing a set number for a contingency fund? Is it by department, or is it from the general revenue?
So, through the chair. So every year, the city does budget an extra line in our operating budget for contingency. And that amount can vary from year to year depending on, what circumstances we're facing. In previous years, we have budgeted at least $50,000 in operating contingencies for unexpected items. In this year's budget, that was increased to $100,000 just because we're negotiating some collective agreements this year. For example, with the fire department, and it was uncertain, if we were budgeting enough. So we did increase that to 100. So we do have a line item in the existing operating budget. And then on top of that, we also have a contingency reserve for winter control, just in case we have a bad snow year.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you to Madam Chair. I think it's important to have those. But what we're discussing here tonight is not necessarily written in stone, it's direction. And we come back to the budget and we feel we have to shift some funding somewhere else, whether it be recreation or a specific, major project to the pool or operations. I presume that will still be in vogue, correct?
Yep.
So you're looking for direction based on all this sage advice you've received tonight. I agree with what has been said. Thank you.
So if I could speak from the chair. So the transit committee is meeting the end of the month. The RFI closed, request for information, and the treasurer is reviewing that, and she's going to, her and her staff are preparing a report for our August 8th meeting. And at that time, council will be asked whether or not we want to apply for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Green Municipal Fund Transit Pilot Project funding, where we can get up to $500,000 or 80% of the costing for a pilot project. And it's proposed that we do a two-year pilot with an option for a third. It depends at that night what the figures are, but I'm hoping the council will support at that time to apply for the application. The bottom line is we still need our share to do the pilot project, because if we put aside $150,000 in January, we took that out of general capital reserve. We have an opportunity here tonight to put another $150 in. That'll be $300,000. And at budget time, we might have to put some more money into the pilot project to pay for our year besides the grant. There's a lot of startup costs involved. If it's decided that we don't do the pilot, then the money goes back into the other funds. But it's very important that we prepare for this, because people are talking, as they are talking to other councillors, about transit. What about transit? What about transit? What about the pool? What about the pool? So it's very imperative that we prepare for this project and move the file forward. So I think it would be prudent to do that. I assume we need a motion. Keel?
Of the projected 2022 accumulated surplus, I move that 250,000 create a new emergency and disaster recovery reserve, that 50,000 be added to the Parks and Rec reserve, that 150,000 be added to the transit reserve.
Transit reserve.
And I think that would leave 674,998 to the the balance to the general reserve.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Giacono? Further discussion? No? Call the question. Those, yes, CEO?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, was there any money being transferred to the Aquatic Center Reserve?
I forgot the aquatic center reserve, keeping the 250, which is why I changed my mind and said the balance to the general.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Enra, for clarification. So we have a motion on the floor. Those in favor of the motion? Those against? Carried. And we wish you a wonderful holiday. Well deserved. I know, well, you're not leaving yet, no. Okay, next up we have Mr. DeRoche to speak about a few items. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. All right, the recommendation for this report is that the Combined Committee approve the rescheduling and deployment of Canada Day fireworks on Saturday, August 5th of Civic Holiday Weekend at Riverside Park, as per the fireworks bylaw number 2021-61. So as everyone is aware, we just completed our Canada Day festivities that were held on June 30th as well as July 1st. Of course, one of the most exciting things that do happen is the fireworks, and they're generally deployed on the evening of July 1, and they're typically hosted by the Pembroke Professional Firefighters Association. As we're all aware, this year the MNRF, they had authorized a restricted fire zone designation for this area. And I think it's really important to understand that while the restriction did not include the fireworks, the decision to postpone was certainly based on the current situation at the given time. We were experiencing a lot of air quality issues, ongoing fires, so on and so forth. I should note that there has been some new information that apparently the fire ban has been lifted as of 4 p.m. today. So I am going to wait to get some more clarification on that through media releases and whatnot, but that is the information that is circulating, so that's good news for us. Under the current city bylaw, August 5th does not meet the criteria, and that's why we're here today to get permission from council to deploy the fireworks on August 5th. In addition to all this, the funding for the fireworks had been allocated in our operational budget, but I should note that we were successful in receiving $12,000 from the Celebrate Canada grant. And generally, when we do receive this grant, a portion of those funds do go towards and support our fireworks. So we are hopeful that council will support the fireworks on August 5th, and that we can deploy these for everyone.
Mr. Durocher. Councillor Frenier?
Absolutely. I would like to put a motion forward that we support the change in date. And I just want to say what a great Canada Day weekend we had in the city of Pembroke. The Friday night event was great. I want to thank Councillor Purcell and Councillor Keel for serving up some hot dogs and staff as well. No, I brought my granddaughter there Friday night, and we had a great time. And no, I know the feedback from the community was amazing.
Didn't I give you a hot dog? I was there too, giving hot dogs.
Yeah. Did you get a hot dog?
No, I was serving hot dogs.
Oh, you were? Well, I'm just talking about the young, handsome ones that were there. But I'm just kidding.
I know
I'm
you
kidding.
are.
But anyway, no, kudos to staff. Great idea.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor for the August 5th requested date. And Councillor Purcell, you seconded. Would like to speak?
No, just a great job on the Canada Day. I thought it was an excellent opportunity. I think it was really successful, and I'm looking for better and better next year. So thank you.
Yeah, and Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I also want to just say how absolutely amazing I thought our Canada Day festivities were. The Friday night event, I certainly hope we'll be looking and budgeting next year to repeat that. And I say that because I was blown away with the success of that event. Oftentimes when you run things for the first time, they're not necessarily your most successful year. People don't know about it. But that was a huge, huge success. And then the next day, I know the mayor was down at the marina for the opening of the Canada Day ceremonies, and I saw Councillor Purcell down there, and the deputy mayor was also at the Canada Day events that went from morning to thunderstorm to pause to back to the amphitheater. And in particular, I want to thank Megan Kavanaugh, Joe Brown, Fred Jennings, Sophie Levasseur, Paige Newman, Mason Godden, and all of the other summer students that were down there. I know there was a lot of staff work went into the Friday night, and Jordan, I know you were down there Friday night, but if you would have saw also how hard they were working on Canada Day the next day, I mean, they really did the city of Pembroke proud, including in horribly inclement weather for a half-hour period. I certainly, I have no doubt that you're very proud of your department, but that was a shining beacon of what the city can do and what our staff can put together for our residents. That was truly an amazing event, and of course I'll be supporting the motion.
Councillor Takano, did you want to speak? No. Okay. So, motion on the floor. Those in favor? Fireworks August 5th? Carried. Next item, we have Victoria Hall, 55 plus, Active Living Centre, roof tender. Mr. Dorsey.
All right, thank you. So the recommendation for this report is that the Combined Committee, number 1, award tender T-23-11, roof replacement for Victoria Hall's 50-plus Active Living Centre to Irvcon Limited in the amount of $98,926,000, excluding HST. And number 2, approve the transfer of $23,926 from the PACC flooring capital budget to offset the shortfall required to complete the work. So a tender was prepared to supply all the material to replace Victoria Hall roof. And some temporary work had been done in the past that was performed to mitigate the existing damage that was done on the interior of the building. So this was due to severe leakage. We had 18 companies that picked up a tender package. And further to this, we did have an on-site meeting that was scheduled, and we had 3 companies that had registered to attend. So we did have the one bid that came in, which was Urbcon Limited, in the amount of $98,926. So funding in the amount of $75,000 had been allocated in the 2023 capital budget for this project. And of course, as we see here, we're close to being over $24,000 for this project. The department's capital project for flooring replacement at the PACC was budgeted at $25,000. So we're not looking to find money, we're just simply looking to reallocate to a high priority project. And that would certainly or could impact the integrity of the building. Thank you.
Discussion motions, Councillor Fenye, then I have Councillor Keel and Purcell.
So I'm supporting this request, but it just goes to show you why we need that extra money that we discussed earlier put back in the recreation capital, because we're responsible for so many facilities and buildings in our community. So I think that $50,000 automatically would be able to put that flooring in the other facility. So I mean, and I'm going to trust the manager's discretion on that one, but yeah, no, I support this.
So you're making a motion?
Motion to support.
Okay. And seconder, so Councillor Keel was going to speak next. Do you want to second the motion and speak? Okay, you seconded. Would you like to speak? And then Councillor Purcell will speak.
So Jordan, so I'm assuming then we're not, Mr. DeRoche, sorry. I'm assuming we're not then proceeding with the flooring project. My question, and I guess my concern, is it, if we don't proceed with it this year, is it just going to be that much more expensive next year? Because I've seen a couple items, not so much in your department, but I guess in operations, where the background is, you know, it came in, you know, we budgeted last year at this price, the bids came in at X, so we didn't proceed with it. We waited a year, and then it was even more expensive than if we had found the money the year prior. So that's my only concern, and I don't know if Ms. Lochte looking at me was thinking of speaking on this one or not. But okay, okay. So that's my only concern, is if we don't proceed with it this year, how expensive will it be next year? That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, through the chair, I think that, you know, ultimately the cost probably will increase. An option could be to see where we're at in the next couple of months as well, and you know, if there is a surplus of money in some of our other capital projects, we could look at offsetting some of the costs there as well. So I mean, that could be an option for us.
Thank you. Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. DeRoche, could you just provide just a little bit of information in regards to what the roof replacement incorporates? I know that there was some fascia and soffit damage as well. I think I provided some pictures and along those things. And also just inspections of the chimney. I know that Councillor Keel and I, after the Grind AGM, we took it upon ourselves just to go for a little tour around, and I guess it'd be the east side of the building. Seems like there's a lot of damage where there's pigeons actually living in the roof. So I'm just wondering if that incorporates the fascia and soffit as well.
Yeah, so through the chair, that's a great question. So yes, that will address some of it. So it not just only on that side of the building, but on the picture that's in the actual presentation here itself. You can't quite see it, but the soffit and fascia is certainly in some cases not there. So it's allowing, we had a black squirrel the other day running around. So I mean, it's got to be addressed. The other thing too, by properly addressing this, is we'll be able to divert the water better as well. So right now water's just coming off the building. So by addressing that, putting eaves and whatnot on it as well, it'll certainly assist with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Giacono.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Victoria Hall has a great deal of historic significance for the community. I believe at one time it was Pembroke City Hall. And my question is not related to the roofing area. I agree with what's being said, but it's sort of up in that general area. The clock that is there is not a real clock. It was a painted clock. And the history was, at the time, they couldn't afford to put a clock in, so they painted 10:30 on the clock. But this clock is faded, and I think that's part of the ambiance of the building. I would never put a clock in there. I would repaint that clock and you know, part of the history being that when the building was built, they went over budget, I guess, and they couldn't afford a clock, so it's part of the ambiance. But right now, if you look at the clock online, you can see it. So either remove it or repaint the numerals. I mean, they're gonna be up there anyway. Maybe somebody could do the job and bring back some of the historical significance of why there is no clock there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is any further discussion? Seeing none, motion on the floor to accept the tender. Those in favor? Carried unanimously.
Can I ask Mr. DeRoche if the squirrel was 55 plus, or was he invading the center?
Yeah, through the chair. I think he was just invading. He was pretty quick, so they couldn't get him with the broom, I guess. So we had to get somebody to come in and get him out.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. DeRoche. We now welcome Mr. Lewis. Welcome, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you,
good to
Deputy
see you
Mayor.
here tonight, and you look very summery tonight. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Because it's very warm in here. Electronic surveillance monitoring system use policy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff is recommending that committee approve the attached draft electronic surveillance monitoring system policy. As the committee is aware, staff has been working on supply and installation of electronic surveillance equipment to aid in the security of city assets and the public. Phase 1 of the installation includes a 360-degree camera at Waterfront Park along Fred Blackstein Boulevard, and additional directional cameras monitoring the egress to the park on Alexander Street and Albert Street. Phase 2 of the present project includes cameras with 360-degree monitoring at the intersection of Pembroke Street East and McKay Street, with additional directional cameras at the intersection. So just to give a status on this project, the department has already purchased and received the equipment for both phases. We have that in stock now. And we are scheduling installation hopefully for later this month. To ensure that the city is in compliance with the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, a policy needs to be put in place and communicated to city employees and to the public prior to the cameras operating. The policy outlines the intent of the monitoring system as a tool to assist the city and police in the event of an incident, in the event an incident is under investigation. While the system will run continuously, the footage will only be viewed on an as-required basis, and it will only be accessible to a small group of approved staff and the OPP. If committee accepts the policy, notification will be posted to the city's website and social media platforms, informing the public prior to the cameras going live. Additionally, signage will be posted at the entrances to the Waterfront Park at Alfred Street, Alexander Street, on the east and west entrances off the Algonquin Trail, and at the Kiwanis Walkway. As well, signage would also be placed at the marina to ensure that the boaters understand that the area is being monitored. All posting of signage per the guidelines laid out by the Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario. So for information purposes, the policy was drafted by staff using policies that other municipalities are using. And then we sent it off to our legal representative to review and finalize the policy for us to ensure that we are compliant. If the policy is accepted, the department will return with a bylaw at a future meeting. As far as financial implications, there are no financial implications associated with this particular report, as the budget for the supply and installation was included in capital budget. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Giacono, then Councillor Purcell.
Move that we accept the policy as presented.
I will second. Also, just a comment. I think, you know, the implementation of electronic surveillance monitoring is very, very important. We all seen the damage that actually occurred at the marina in terms of people tagging buildings and those kinds of things, the flower incident here. You know, and I think I like to see more use in terms of electronic surveillance. I was talking with Bethia Summers in regards to the Downtown Business Association, and you know, there's no parking. It's bicycle parking downtown, none, zero. So, you know, if there's an opportunity to look at, you know, surveillance areas where people can park their bikes, know that they're safe, such as, you know, Shamrock Park is a location that I would recommend, with monitoring and signage available there as well. And let's face it, you know, people aren't buying bicycles for $100 anymore. I mean, the electric bicycle options are $2,500 plus now. And that's a deterrent for people to actually use other modes of transportation because, one, there's no bicycle parking downtown, only on Lake Street. You know, there's, again, there's no camera monitoring in those areas. So, I think this is great, and I would approve this.
Discussion, motion on the floor, discussion, Councillor Keel.
So just a couple questions. One part of the bylaw, talking about like where the cameras will be viewing in that. For instance, one of the things is that it won't be, I guess it won't be trained on areas where the public has a higher expectation of privacy, like washrooms and whatnot. Is that pertaining to, like, I'm not trying to be funny about this, is that pertaining to inside washrooms or like a washroom building? So for example, does that mean we couldn't have a camera trained on the marina washroom to catch vandals either doing stuff inside or outside? Can I just get some interpretation on that section?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the intent of that is to ensure that when people expect a certain amount of privacy, they can receive that privacy. So definitely, you wouldn't have cameras inside a washroom facility. If you have an area which, you know, one of the issues we're dealing with is the vandalism of the washrooms at the amphitheater. The camera is going to be placed in an area that it will see that building but won't see necessarily the entrances to that building, providing a certain amount of privacy to those that may need to use the facilities, if I can say it that way. So that is the intent, is to provide privacy but not negate the fact that we need to look after our facilities.
And that would be an interpretation that I would both accept and approve of. With respect to the signage, my only concern about the signage that you addressed is if we were to ever expand what we want to do, are we now having to pop up signs in every, but like for instance, if we started to go down to Riverside Park, now we need signs for Riverside Park. If we were to do Rotary Park, now we need signs for Rotary Park. Is it enough? I guess in your review of it, do the signs need to be that pervasive in the specific area, or for instance, would it be enough to put signs on the entrance to the city of Pembroke, advising people that public areas may be monitored by video cameras? And what I'll say, and I know the mayor, when the mayor and I were both on the police services board when we were talking about cameras downtown, and I had some unease about the cameras downtown, partially from the first question, which is that downtown also has a lot of residential spaces, and you know, I was told at the time that these are trained on the sidewalks and you know, not looking into any of the residential second story stuff. So I'm not opposed to using cameras to protect our residents, to protect our public spaces. But I'm just curious if we're going to get into 400 signs around the city of Pembroke, or if there's a way to more efficiently do that. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, my interpretation of the information I've done the research on and staff have done the research on, and in discussing with legal, our legal rep to put this policy together, if you're going to do surveillance monitoring of a facility, that signage should be put around that facility to notify anybody entering into that facility that there is surveillance monitoring. So in answer to your question, if Riverside Park was going to have surveillance monitoring, we would post additional signage there. If we did it at Rotary, we would post additional signage there. If the entire area, using the downtown core as an example, entering into the downtown core, you would put signage. So all the various side streets coming into the downtown core, that type of thing, which signage exists in various locations throughout the city.
So in answer to your question, signage would be required in all of those areas.
Mayor Survey, then Councillor Frenier, then Councillor Purcell.
I just simply wanted to thank Mr. Lewis and staff for all of the hard work. I know that Mr. Lewis has spent a considerable amount of time researching the appropriate cameras, placement in certain areas, how it can be built out so as to go at different intersections, that it's not only about surveillance, but we've had numerous conversations, and I know that you've been to the Police Services Board about conversations about using it from operations, what is the conditions of the roads, having to have staff come in and assess whether or not there's a certain amount of snow, and does it, is it hit the minimum maintenance standards and so forth. So I just want to commend, I recognize, and I think the public needs to recognize the amount of time that you've put into this to make sure that it successfully goes forward, and that it's about taking care of our assets, yes, but it's also about utilizing it for other purposes, operations and so forth. So I just kudos to staff for doing this.
Councillor Frenier?
No, great idea. Although the signs might be an eyesore, I believe that they would be a deterrent to crimes or things happening in our public spaces. And so I think it's a great thing. The signs, are they going to be looking like this, or is it just an idea of what they'd look like?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that was just an example that we were able to get off the internet. We'll design an appropriate sign.
Okay. Because maybe the city...
Based on the appropriate location, maybe using city colors and so forth, yeah.
I was wondering, though, because it says area on one of these, it says area is subject to camera surveillance. Could we not put the city of Pembroke uses camera surveillance and just make it more blanketing? So people maybe think we have them other places, even if it's, not there? Throughout the city, I would say make it more broad, so then maybe people are questioning, gee, maybe they have a camera here. Do you know what I'm saying? Make it more broad, like the city of Pembroke utilizes camera surveillance throughout the city, and then have the section 33.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Personal Privacy Act is very clear on ensuring people's personal privacy.
Okay.
So it's necessary to let them know the area they're entering into has surveillance as well, in discussions with both the supplier and installer, as well as our legal representative on installing cameras in various different locations, installing dummy cameras as used to be the norm back in the day. It can't be done anymore. If a camera is installed and it's not operational, it needs to be bagged and covered.
Okay.
Because you want to ensure people's privacy, but you also want to let them know that, okay, I can see a camera there, I am on camera, so I'm going to act accordingly and not fooled, if I can say it that way.
Well, thank you. I think that the community watch program that we have started is also a deterrent to crime. So I guess that would fill in the gaps for where we don't have cameras. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Purcell.
Just a little note. I know that Mr. DeRoche, provided us the signage in regards to the park. So, could we include, some just pictorial, like in terms of a camera, but also have the exact, in those areas where it needs to be deemed, just to kind of like, hey, you're entering the park, it's monitored on the signage as well. And then also, and I think, Councillor, Lafernier had touched on it, is the CamSafe program. So it's, there's an opportunity, and we need to promote that more. I know I registered my cameras with CamSafe, and if we have more residents do that, in the event that there is something that occurs, the OPP can request, to view that and help them in terms of their investigation and keeping our streets and our community safe. So I'd like to see a little bit more of the CamSafe information kind of be posted on social media, and I'll share some of that as well. But I think other than that, I think it's a great initiative, and thank you for all the time and effort that you put into this, because I think this is something that we need to build upon, so that we can build a safe community, and I'm sure it'll be communicated in our safety plan in terms of our community well-being plan as well. So kudos to you.
Just a quick comment from the chair. Thank you for bringing this forward to you and staff, Mr. Lewis. When we had the unfortunate vandalism twice within 2 weeks at the waterfront, people were asking about cameras, and we said yes, cameras in the works, but first we have to approve a policy. So it's very welcome to see, and it will act as a deterrent and catch any culprit that has any idea of going down there. So we have a motion on the floor to accept the policy. Call the question. Those in favor? Carried. Next item, street closure request policy. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Operations Department is seeking direction to create a formal policy regarding street closure requests. So the city routinely receives requests for a street closure, generally for short periods of time and for various reasons, like fundraising event, festivals, a parade, and often to ensure safety of runners during a race or a walk or something of that nature. This particular policy does not include construction closures. Construction closures are handled directly through the Operations Department as the roads authority, so they don't come into play with this particular policy. Current process for a road closure by a third party has the event organizer submitting a request to the CAO. The CAO discusses the request with the appropriate directors and then approves or denies the request as appropriate. A recent request was made to close a street for a private function for parking for invited guests. This would not be a request that would normally be approved, as it wasn't an event that was open to all interested parties. It wasn't a fundraising event where others could join or that type of thing. So the Operations Department would like to create a formal policy that outlines what is deemed appropriate for a street closure, what requirements must be met, and any details so that there is sufficient consistency in the closure requests and approvals. Less second guessing for staff when requests come in, questions as to whether or not there's charges, private service charges or not, that type of stuff. So staff has researched how other municipalities handle these requests, and for information, very few examples were found of street closures for private functions. There are other policies out there for community type events, but not for private functions. The City of London does have a significant policy in place that they use for neighborhood street closures. Some of the details of that is the applicant must gain the approval of 66% of the residents or the property owners on the affected street. They must provide a site plan, a detailed site plan, and the road closure must include a 6-meter accessible lane for fire, police, and emergency services. And they must also show where all the fire hydrants are. The emergency access lane is to remain unobstructed through the event, and there is also a substantial insurance and separate forms to be filled out, especially if with the health unit, if there's food being provided at the event. If the event is approved, barricades are dropped off at the nearest city property to the event for the organizer to place on the road at the start of the event, take down and replace back to that piece of city property. And the City of London does not charge for those barricades. This is just an example of one of those policies that are out there. Not saying that we have to adhere to any of those. Operations staff is recommending a policy that includes the following. Applications must be submitted through the CAO's office, and then that can be distributed to the appropriate director and to council if required. If it's a park required use, it may not necessarily need to come to the Operations Department, and the CAO can work with Mr. Durocher and deal with that. If it's a street closure, Mr. Durocher wouldn't necessarily be involved. Only events that are open to the public should be considered for approval. No fees would apply for a simplified barricade supply. We're looking at maybe 5 intersections. It's something that 2 staff members, 1 truck, some barricades in the back. We can go to the various different locations, drop the barricades off, go back and pick them up when it's done. It's not a huge inconvenience for staff to do during their normal workday. User fees will apply per the user fee bylaw if a request for an extensive barricade supply, so greater than 5 intersections, or if it requires traffic management. and/or if the applicant requires city staff to install the barricades and provide detour planning. A larger detour, a larger street closure would require potentially a detour route with detour signage, not just some barricades blocking off the entrance to a road. It may require some additional planning. How are you going to allow access for local traffic that still may need to enter, but you need to block off a certain street so somebody doesn't get stuck somewhere and have to try and turn around. For those, it gets a little bit more extensive for operations staff to deal with, or for parks if it was a larger event in one of the parks. And we're suggesting that a user fee happen for those. No closure of signalized intersections would ever be approved or could ever be approved unless we have confirmation of police presence. Only police can direct traffic through a signalized intersection. No one else can do that. Operations staff would prepare and distribute the media releases, and we do that as a courtesy because we've got the contacts and some of the general public may not have the contacts for those. The event organizer would have to contact emergency services. We would provide them with the contacts for them to contact the OPP, police, ambulance. The reason for that is they are responsible for the closure. The organizer of the event needs to be able to be contacted by the ambulance service to confirm it's 8 o'clock. You said your event was going to be done at 8 o'clock. Are you done? Can I now direct ambulances through that street, or do I continue to direct elsewhere? So it's better if the organizer is coordinating emergency services. We would have to look into insurance and indemnification to ensure that the city would be covered should there be a claim. How we go about that, we're not 100% sure yet, but if it's the direction of council that we look at indemnification and insurance, then we'll have to look at what's appropriate, how we go about doing that, some risk management and some analysis on risk management. The reason I'm saying it that way is if it's one block of a small street with a couple houses on it, you may not necessarily need to have a $50,000 insurance policy. Risk management, it's not that big. On a bigger street closure, you may want to consider what's going to happen if somebody should submit a claim. It would have to be clear in the policy that applications for a street closure is not necessarily going to be approved. We may approve a street closure for a certain event on McKay Street, for example, and we wouldn't necessarily do it on Christie Street. It depends on traffic volumes, traffic speeds, truck routes, so forth. All those various different things come into play as to whether or not we could or could not approve. And there may be other inclusions that the committee may wish to include or changes to what we've suggested. So with direction of committee, the operations department will return at a future meeting with a formal policy. So there are no financial implications. With that being said, should this policy open up to more and more events happening, we would have to look at additional resources, and mainly in the form of, do we have enough barricades? Do we have enough signage? Is that stuff in inventory? Should we start seeing requests happening more often? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So I think we'll just go around the table with our input. That'll be more efficient. So we'll start with Mayor Gervais. We'll go around this way.
I don't really have much to add. I know that staff have taken considerable time trying to draft a street closure policy. I recognize that sometimes things might seem like we're trying to be cumbersome or that we're trying to impede certain individuals doing things, but it's the life that that we're in, and that we're having to make sure that the city is safe from claims and so forth. So I don't have anything to add to what Mr. Lewis has done.
Councillor Giacono.
Leave it to staff's expertise to go ahead. Thank you.
Councillor Purcell.
My only comment is, I know 25 years ago, we closed a street in Canada, Morton, and Morton. Believe it that. That's the intersection. Morton, and Morton. Street went like this. And It was for like just a community event, like in terms of the residents that lived on the street, and I thought it was a great opportunity to meet your, neighbors and kind of build that, relationship, get to know one another and the whole bit. So how would that work then if somebody came forward and said, okay, I'm in kind of like a burb area, if I wanted to it's more of a traffic calming piece, right? So that you don't have traffic ripping through there when you have residents that are out, trying to get together. So I know that Canada has that, so you might want to just check with that, because I know that we requested and we got the actual approval from the City of Canada to do that. But I think, there's a little bit of opportunities. I also don't want to make it too restrictive for individuals not to do those little things, because I think they're really important in terms of building our community. Thank you.
Louis?
If I could comment before we go further around the table, it wouldn't be the first time the City of Pembroke has allowed road closures for a community event. It may be a neighborhood community that we're referring to and not the community as a whole, and that would be something that would be considered. We will take that into account in the policy that we write to allow for those type of events to happen, not necessarily a private event for one property owner and allow a street closure is what we're really trying to get at.
I think I was a little bit confused. Sorry. I think I was a little bit confused in regards to what you meant by community. If it's open to everybody, which typically it would be if you came, you'd get a burger or a hot dog. But anyway, that's the way it is. Yeah, thank you.
Lafreniere?
Yes, no, I think this is great. I've been involved in a few events for runs and things where we're going through the city, and it's a lot of work for staff, and I've always had great respect with the cooperation that we get, but it is good to have something in writing. I was just reading through about sometimes I have to change the route, as they did recently with one of the runs because of the flooding at the waterfront. So would they have to provide an alternate route in those cases, like to the city? Like how would you last minute navigate that?
Generally, it's not a huge issue. It's more of a call, or we'd have a contact for the organizer. The organizer would have a contact with operations, or if it was Parks that was doing the closure, generally there's a contact being shared. And a last minute would be, we have to change the route due to this circumstance. This is where we're going to go. Do you have any issues? And it would be, no, we have no issues. That seems reasonable. Go ahead and use that alternate route. Or, no, you can't do that because of whatever the circumstances may be. You're going to now direct people through a signalized intersection on a timed run where they don't want to have to stop for the green light. So maybe go one block further down and cross at that location where it's not signalized. So we would work with the organizers.
So I wonder if that shouldn't be included, just sort of a disclaimer saying that, in the event of a weather event or whatever, the city has the right to negotiate alternate plans on short notice, something like that, just so they can't say, well, you came 2 days before the event and made us, anyway, I think you get the point. Thank you.
Councillor Keel?
Well, Councillor Lafreniere stole one of mine, because I was also thinking the same thing, that we're, in the event of an emergency, some contact is going to be needed to either change routes or look at different dates or something if we couldn't accommodate another route. With respect to user fees, I wouldn't be afraid to charge them, frankly. Community events are certainly great, but if any of these people, whether it was a street party or something, was looking at renting a hall or something, and the fact of the matter is our staff's time is worth something. So I wouldn't, and I know someone's going to say, well, Councillor Keel, you just said I want an application fee. What if my application doesn't get approved? Well, maybe it's an application fee that's charged on acceptance of your event. And then if we're talking about barricades or whatnot, again, that's staff time delivering them, and the barricades themselves, that's wear and tear. So quite frankly, I think the City of Pembroke's user fees are quite, I don't want to say low, but I think they're quite appropriate, and and I wouldn't be afraid to charge for these kinds of things. Money is time, and time is money, and again, if they went anywhere else, they would certainly have to be picking up the bill for things. With respect to the signaled intersections, so is that just when you're completely closing off the intersection, or if you're closing off even one side? Like I'm thinking of the Harvest Fest, which would have, which street's that? Victoria Street. They had the Armory blocked off. There's lights at the RBC thing. So, like, should that not have happened, or would that not happen in the future?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the intersection itself at that point was not closed. The intersection was still operating. The leg of the intersection that was closed was that entire block. So it didn't require that. When I refer to traffic control and traffic management through a signalized intersection, my example to Councillor Lafreniere, a timed run where the runners are going through the intersection, whether it's green, red, or otherwise, is an area where you need the OPP, in this case the OPP presence, so that they can stop traffic to allow the runners to continue through. And then when the runners have passed, they open the intersection back up. We can't close the intersection, or we can't allow anybody else to close the intersection. Mr. Chair, if I can, point of clarification for Councillor Keel. So if we're thinking about the potential of doing a user fee or an application fee, would you be asking staff through the CAO's office to see where we do charge or not charge? And my specific example would be in support of the PBIA. If they were doing a road closure here, this policy would apply to them as well, not just the general public or an event organizer. It would include the PBIA and other charitable events and stuff like that. So we would just have to be, staff would need to be sure as to exactly who we charge, when we charge, or...
So my opinion would be that obviously the policy would not apply to city events. The PBIA is an interesting one. On the one hand, they're their own separate organization, but on the other hand, they're also specifically created by council. I would have no problem exempting them from the application fees. In terms of other charitable organizations and that, there's cost to things. You rent a hall to have a fundraising dance, you pay the hall. So I wouldn't go, and I know you're asking my opinion, and others on council might have something, but I wouldn't go much further beyond the PBIA or any city-created organization that I'm maybe missing or not thinking of.
Thank you, Councillor Keel. Councillor Frenier.
So just to sort of touch on something that Councillor Keel tweaked for me, I know that had discussions in the previous term about the use of the PMC and when should we waive fees for charities, when should we charge, and it gets to be very sensitive in the community. So I tend to think that everyone should pay, because unfortunately, what we feel about a certain charity may not ring through to all the ratepayers or people that live in the city. So for us to choose to donate or support a certain charity by waiving fees, you know, we're donating our tax dollars on behalf of them. So I think that I agree with Councillor Keel, is that I know that I believe the town of Petawawa doesn't waive fees for charities, like for their facilities or anything of that nature. So I know I was thinking about staff coming up with a policy like that. But I think that everybody should pay, exactly. Because then we're not making that decision for our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to wrap it up, if I could speak from the chair, we have a PBA breakfast meeting Thursday morning. So could you forward this report to Ms. Summers, the director, and we can have it added to our agenda, and she can request feedback from the members of the downtown core and send them directly to you in a summary document or something. Yes, Ms. CEO?
Yeah, I was just going to add, actually, Bethia Summers of the PBIA was aware that we were doing this report, and so she's actually provided their policy. They've created a policy in regards to closing roads, so we'll have to kind of coordinate the two of them, but I think it'll be a good discussion for your next meeting, though.
Yeah, so if she could get a copy of this and, put the two together, that's great. Okay, thank you.
So she's already got a copy, and she provided...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she provided their copy of their policy. So
Thank
they've
you.
created a policy.
Is that sufficient, Mr. Lewis?
That is, thank you very
Okay.
much, Chair.
Next item, touchdown areas on the Algonquin Trail. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Operations Department recommends the committee approve a modified plan for the creation of touchdown areas along the Algonquin Trail. In February of 2022, and yes, we have been waiting a long time for this to come across our tables again. In February of 2022, the Operations Department received direction to proceed with an application under the Active Transportation Fund, Infrastructure Canada, for the development of trailheads and touchdown areas along the Algonquin Trail. In March of 2022, the department presented options to committee that had been discussed with various stakeholders to determine the best amenities to be included. Unfortunately, we were not successful in getting that funding. Therefore, we would not be able to complete the projects in their entirety with the limited budget that we have available. So we've come up with a modified plan. That modified plan for 2022, utilizing the existing budget, includes Farmers Market at the end of Victoria Street. And we designate a small area at the Farmers Market. In that location, we'd include 2 benches, a bicycle repair station, a waste receptacle, a bicycle rack for some additional bicycle parking, some wayfinding signage, and some maps. Then we are recommending that we utilize the Douglas Street at Boundary Road location. Again, we'd place 2 benches, bicycle repair station, waste receptacle, bicycle rack, wayfinding signage, and again, some maps. And we would be working with Mr. DeRoche in the parks. We've seen the signage that has been recommended in the parks, and we'd like to copy and emulate and work with those in our locations as well, so that the city's signage kind of coordinates together. The 2 other locations that had previously been discussed was one at College Way, and we had, again, benches, waste receptacles, some signage. In that particular location, we were going to do a granular drop-off to allow parents to drop the children off with bicycles, give them an area to get off the road, take the bicycle off the back of the rack, allow the kids to go on the Algonquin Trail or so forth, but not vehicle parking. The other location was Forest Road. We had planned on putting a picnic table at Forest Road, some benches, waste receptacles, some more signage, some lighting at that particular location, and to utilize the existing granular parking lot. The location right now at Forest Road on city property has a granular parking lot, but it's not formal. It's just a big lay-down area of granular material. Right now it is utilized by the ATV club, and in the wintertime it's utilized by the snowmobile club. Someone can go there with a truck and trailer, drop off their piece of equipment, enter onto the Algonquin Trail and go. We had hoped to formalize with, a picnic area and that type of stuff. Unfortunately, with the funds we have available, we're not recommending we do that this year. The Operations Department does plan on trying to get some of the additional locations done in future years. If budget will allow it, we'll continue with the program. So the total estimated cost for 2023 is $43,000. There's currently just under $39,000 available in the budget for this year, so we've got a small shortfall of approximately $4,100, and Operations is recommending that come from general capital reserves if required. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Discussion, motions. First we have Councillor Purcell, then Councillor Frenier and Keel. Purcell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Lewis, I spoke to this earlier this evening in regards to downtown Pembroke not having, bicycle racks. There's nothing downtown. Is there an opportunity, since we weren't successful in terms of getting the fund in regards to Algonquin Trail, can we look at, setting up a bicycle station or a bicycle area in the Shamrock Park area, like I had suggested before? I was just talking about this probably before you actually came in. I don't know if we can include that, or is there an opportunity to look at how we can address that going forward? Or could you work with Bethia Summers in regards to looking at, maybe a cost share between the Downtown Business Association and the City of Pembroke, just to get those incorporated? I know a lot of people would like to take their bicycles downtown, have a safe parking area where they can, visit the shops, maybe go for supper, jump back on your bicycle and go. Having the repair stations is nice. I totally agree. The benches are appropriate. I'm just wondering if we can kind of look after our downtown first and then start building them out in terms of the trailheads. Just a question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is going to be some bicycle parking, bicycle racks of sorts or something like that included in these two locations, with the thoughts that if somebody is on the Algonquin Trail and wants to get off the Algonquin Trail, they can park their bike and meander through the downtown. With that being said, all our downtown connector design projects include bicycle parking. So on Victoria Street, which was the latest one that was complete, there is bicycle parking that was designed in that. If it's appropriate and we can fit it into the design, we are doing that on all the downtown connectors. At present, and I've dealt with the PBIA for a number of years in various different things, the waste receptacles and the benches and bicycle parking and so forth. On some of our downtown connectors, the sidewalks are fairly narrow, and if you take up space for bicycle parking, you're not providing enough space for the pedestrians, especially those that need the universal accessibility. So I have no issues whatsoever with talking to Bethia on what we can do to help provide for additional bicycle parking. We definitely discuss it with her when we're doing our downtown connector designs to include additional in that.
I think that's beneficial. I think that it's really, really important that we actually have that bicycle parking, because what happens right now is people are changing it to, meters, and it's just getting in the way. And I know that there's some concerns even in regards to sandwich boards, to the amount of sandwich boards that are downtown for people that have, disabilities in terms of maneuvering around those things. They become tripping hazards. So it's no different than the bicycle parking. So if we can kind of have those targeted areas in all parts of the downtown, because not everybody comes from the trail. I think a majority of people want to be on pavement. So they come from, all different areas to come downtown, east and west, and they don't necessarily take the trail. So that's I think that's where we have a deficiency in regards to our active transportation, is just to lock a safe, secured space downtown to lock up bicycles.
Point of information, I have one, but Seo Unra has one first.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, it seems like to be a hot topic in regards to cycling and stuff like that. And I actually met with Bethia this morning, and that was one of the topics that we talked about. So she has done an inventory in regards to the current bike parking downtown, and so there are two locations at the farmers market. There is two locations at Victoria Street, as Mr. Lewis has pointed out, and there are two locations at the Alexander Street, right on the Alexander Street parking lot, right on Lake Street. So each spot provides probably parking for 8. The concern that she had and has been mentioned by Councillor Purcell is in regards to parking on the Pembroke Street. So that's the concern. So, I'm just looking at the recommendation and the possibility of, not providing benches and bicycle racks at the farmers market, because that already exists. And so could we, reallocate that to something else? So I just wanted to provide my input in regards to being a cyclist and knowing what cyclists want.
So, I was just going to echo a point of information. The lack of adequate cycling racks in downtown is in our strategic plan, the PBA, and so I know that Mr. Lewis, when you do the street that Scotiabank is on design plan, once we do that, that'll be a bicycle rack there, and that the CEO will work with staff and Mr. Lewis to get more bicycle racks down there. Yep.
Just one comment. I know that the PBI put out a nice parking map in terms of all the parking locations, but it doesn't have bicycle parking on there. So just, there's an opportunity there just to also include that in terms of, that map.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Frenier.
So my comments are more around, when I'm looking at the two choices that we've been given within our budget, I guess what I'm asking myself is which ones serve our residents the best and which one brings people downtown? Right now, our residents can't drive their snow machine through the city to get to the trail, nor can they drive their ATV. They need a parking spot to bring their trailer and then jump on the trail. So really, I would rather see us spend a little more money and do this right for our residents and choose one of those locations where there is a parking lot. So College Way, to me, is the natural one. Farmers Market, yes, but I think College Way, I like the idea because it would be a granular drop-off area. And that's what I think is important to our own residents, as well as it being downtown. So I agree the farmers market would have been great, but I want somewhere where our residents can drive, park, drop off their ATVs and leave their vehicle. And I think that it's downtown. I'm questioning the Douglas Street, and if I could ask through the chair, Douglas Street, I know where it is, off Pembroke Street West, so it's just east of Forest Road, correct? What space is there for that? Because I've walked that trail from Forest to Trafalgar Road. I'm trying to think, there is no intersection there at Douglas Street. Where would all this structure be?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's the intersection of Douglas Street and Boundary Road West. So immediately beside the Renfrew County Housing facility that's there, in between there and the Algonquin Trail, there's the unopened road allowance of Boundary Road West.
Oh.
The dead end of Boundary Road West, if I can call it that. There's an area of property there. And that was the area, it's a natural egress onto the Algonquin Trail that's used by that neighborhood.
Okay, so I would prefer either Forest Road or College Way as one of the locations and not Douglas. Because Forest Road has, like you say, it already has sort of a parking area there. So I would rather see it done.
So through you, Mr. Chair, if I can, I had discussions with the Snowmobile Club and with the ATV Club. They do not prefer College Way as a location for ATV parking. They feel if ATV parking is going to happen, let's assume somebody is traveling a distance on the Algonquin Trail with their ATV. We would love them to stop in the downtown core, park their ATV and meander around our downtown and visit a restaurant. They would prefer the farmers market area. It's got a higher visibility. They feel more comfortable that their very, very expensive equipment is going to be seen and watched. Whereas College Way, they don't feel that way. So if we're thinking about shifting some or reallocating some funds, I like Mr. Unrau's idea. We can reallocate some of the funds that we're going for bicycles at Farmers Market and see if we can work with PBIA to find some other locations. And maybe we move Douglas to Forest Road. It's a very short distance down the trail if somebody was on a bicycle.
Okay.
If they needed the bicycle repair station to do some work on their vehicle, on their bicycle, they're still only a short distance down the road.
So just a question further. So Farmers Market, where would they park? At the marina? If this facility is at the Farmers Market.
So this This facility we're referring to, though, is bicycles,
Yeah.
not ATVs, not snowmobiles. We're not referring to a trailhead, we're referring to a touchdown area.
Oh, so just for your bikes, 2 benches, bicycle repair, waste receptacle,
Yeah.
bicycle rack. Okay, so it's not access to the trail. It's a
It-
drop-off point.
And I'm sure if we had enough room in the area, if somebody on an ATV came off the trail, parked their vehicle, wanted to sit on the bench and, have a quick lunch or something like that, by all means, I don't think we'd stop them. This is not intended to be a trailhead. A trailhead is
Okay.
what Forest Road would
Oh,
be.
got it.
Where you
Okay.
travel with your truck, trailer, and your
Okay,
vehicle.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, I got it. Great.
Councillor Keel.
I'm good.
Does that, anyone, no, does that give you enough information, Mr. Lewis?
So if I'm getting the consensus, then I think we'll look at Forest Road location as one of the locations that we'll put the amenities that we've discussed in the report. We'll reallocate some of the amenities from the farmers market, hopefully try and get something for bicycles in Pembroke Street. We'll work on something of that with the available budget.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
Next item, 3 more to go. Bennett Street and Boundary Road water main replacement and Taylor Bridge. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Operations Department recommends the following. Committee approve award for the Bennett Street and Boundary Road water main replacement and Taylor Bridge water main Phase 2, contract number 22-1733-2 to RGT Kluche Construction in the amount of $3,250,325 plus HST, that being the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Committee approve additional expenditures in the amount of $120,000 for contingency allowance. The total value of the recommendations equal $3,370,325 plus applicable HST. The contract includes the installation of a new water main on Boundary Road from Bennett Street to approximately 100 meters short of Paul Martin Drive, and we will connect to the existing water main that's at that location. Work will include full restoration, road restoration, and the addition of paved shoulder hydrants and minor structure works. Additionally, a new water main will be suspended on the Taylor Bridge to provide the distribution system with another river crossing. So the contract was procured using our normal methods as detailed in the procurement policy. The tender closed on July 6th, and we received 3 bids. Bids were received as follows. RGT Kluche Construction, $3,250,325. Bonisher Excavating Inc., $3,589,136.01. And McRae Excavating, $3,883,918.30. So for information, this is the second phase of a 2-phase project. Phase 1 was the water main replacement on Bennett Street. The city has received funding from the ISIP Green Infrastructure Fund for the 2-phased project. The federal contribution is fixed at 40%. That amounts to $1,909,000. Provincial contribution is 33 1/3, amounting to $1,590,674.24. These funding values are based on the estimates at the time of the application. That's when the government decides what their funding cap is going to be based on the estimates when we apply. So the city's contribution is 26.67% of all the eligible costs, but the city is responsible to fund all amounts in excess of the eligible costs, including any budget increase and cost overruns. The 2023 capital budget included $2,860,000 for Phase 2, and that includes the government funding. Project costs as tendered, including contract and field administration, construction, additional expenditures, net HST, total $3,495,280.54. That represents a budget shortfall of $635,280.54, And in discussions with the treasurer, it's recommended we use the OSIF funding monies to fund that shortfall. Staff and the successful proponent will review the scope of work, ensuring that we don't significantly change the scope of work from the application. If we change the scope of work from the application basically becomes null and void. So we can't backtrack from what we applied for. But we will look at the scope of work, especially in the area of disposal of excess soils. So provincially mandated regulations related to disposing of excess soils, and the cost in this particular project for that line item is just over $500,000. So we will talk to the contractor and see if there's anything we can do. We have some ideas that we want to talk to the contractor on to see if we can reduce that significantly, to try and reduce some of the costs. Based on the funding agreement, the federal contribution is just under $1.15 million. And the provincial contribution for this phase is $955,000, with the city's portion being roughly $1.4 million. And the above award includes the award of contract administration services to McIntosh Perry based on their submitted proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Discussion and motions. First, we have Councillor Keel.
So the Bennett Street area has obviously been under quite a lot of construction for quite some time. This is obviously a pretty busy thoroughfare. What is your detouring expected to look like while this project's underway?
Through you, Mr. Chair, once we get through the Boundary Road intersection this year, the Boundary Road and Bennett Street intersection this year, Bennett Street and Boundary Road will be opened back up again. So it's just the leg basically from the PACC heading towards KI. It would be closed. That main intersection of Boundary Road would be opened back up again. Traffic right now is detoured around off the bridge and using Paul Martin Drive. So we would continue to do that. Paul Martin Drive, Bennett Street, Boundary Road. So the only section of Boundary Road that would be closed would be that small section between Bennett and basically the bridge.
So we wouldn't be going up by the fire hall and taking traffic that way?
Depending on the direction that you were traveling, yes. Upper Valley Drive and International Drive would be used if I was on Boundary Road and I'm heading towards Highway 41 or 17, I would take the right at International Drive, Upper Valley, and I would head out that way. So that would be available. The residential, because the intersection is closed right now and all the work that the intersection is entailing, is forcing us to detour some traffic through that residential area, which is called Johnson Meadows area. Unfortunately, because of that intersection, we have to do that. On the next phase, that will not be required. We will not have to use those residential streets because the intersection will be back open once phase 2 starts.
Councillor Purcell, did you?
I was just going to motion to approve the award for Bennett Street and the Boundary Road water main replacement. And also that we approve the additional expenditures in the amount of $120,000 for a contingency allowance for a total value of $3,370,325 plus applicable HST.
Seconder, Councillor Giacono.
Second the motion.
Discussion? No. Those in favor? Carried. Next item. The, oh, I'm in front of me here. Water purification plant, filters and launders, and under tile drains design award. Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Operations Department recommends the following. Committee approve award for the design of the water purification plant filters and launderers to Associated Engineering, also called AE Limited. The current filtration process has been confirmed, and AE is working on our infrastructure needs study and our 20-year facility plan, and it has been confirmed that one of the limiting factors of our capacity and performance at the plant is due to the filtration process. We do have 2 filters. Both those filters are basically granular bed filters. They sit over top of a clay tile underdrain system. Filter media hasn't been changed since 2007. It has exceeded its anticipated useful life. And we are experiencing some operational challenges with the filtration system because of the rapid deterioration and our ability to clean these filters. The granular material tends to compact. We backwash through it, it moves a little bit, and then it compacts back down again. And when you have compacted granular material, the water doesn't flow through it as easily, which means your filtration process is affected. So we haven't done any major upgrades or repairs to that system, to the filtration system, since the facility was commissioned in 1984. The amount that we had allocated in the 2023 budget, this year's budget, was to do a media replacement. We had anticipated going in there, taking all the media out of the filters and putting new media back in again, which would basically restart the filtering process again. In discussions with the consultant doing the INS and the 20-year facility plan, they're looking at it and saying your under-tile drains need to be redone. You have to do some work in other parts of the filter. If you replace your filter media, you're likely going to lose a significant amount, and it's going to cost you a lot more to put it back in again. The other factor that's affecting it is to take the 2 filters down, we can't turn the plant off. We still have to continue to provide potable water to our residents and to our neighbors. So to do that, you can't just shut the plant off. We'd have to bring in a temporary portable filtration system and attach it to the side of the building and basically filter through that to still work within our process while this goes down. So if we take the filter media out, we got to do that. We change the filter media, we put it back in again, and then in a year or 2 years' time, we have to go in and do the under-tile drains, then we have to do it all over again. We got to bring in that temporary system again. We got to take the media out. Hopefully we could store it somewhere so we could reuse it and start the process all over again. So the project has turned on us slightly from what we had imagined being a staged process to get the filters rehabilitated to something that basically you got to look at it as one project now. So normally, to procure design services for a project of this nature, we would write an RFP. We'd go out, engineering consultants would pick up our RFP and provide us with proposals. We'd evaluate the proposals and we'd go from there. We'd hire a consultant to do this design project for us. Unfortunately, a water filtration system is a very, very complicated thing, and you need some serious expertise to be able to write the RFP to ensure that the consultants have the information they need to put a proper proposal in. One factor is if we hire an engineering consultant to do the RFP writing for us, then they are excluded from submitting. So we would lose that consultant out of the running for start. Additionally, we've got a consultant that's doing our INS and our 20-year facility plan. This is not the only project we're going to have in that 20-year span. There are going to be additional projects that are going to be required to ensure that the plant continues to operate and run and allow us for growth within our system and so forth. So we want to make sure that the consultant that's working on all of those other future projects understands what the filter project is going to be like, and they're not designing against each other or recommending against each other. So another thought or another point to keep in mind. And I mentioned before, the design of this one will include removing the existing filter media, removing and replacing the under-tile drains, which are clay tiles, rehabilitation of the filter box, which is a big, giant concrete box, installation of new under-tile drains, placement of new media, and then we would have to have that temporary filtration system running at the time that we're doing it. So we have two processes that we can go through. We can procure through competitive bid. So we hire an engineering firm. They write us the proposal. We go out for proposals. We get proposals to come back into us again, and eventually we'll have a design team hired through that process. Based on the fact that we need an engineering consultant to help us write the initial RFP, so that we can hire somebody to write the design, to deal with the design, we figure we're 16 to 20 weeks out before we would have a design team starting on this project. I'm being a little conservative with 16 to 20 weeks, but it's definitely not going to be in the next couple months. It would definitely be a significant amount of time. And time is of the essence on the project. Filter media alone is about 8 months out. We need somebody to design the filter media that works with our intake, that works with the water that we're drawing, the raw water that we're drawing. Filter media is very specific. Its chemical composition, all that kind of stuff, depends on what you're drawing in. So all that has to go through. And we don't anticipate, the operations department does not anticipate the prices are going to be any more advantageous doing the RFP process than they are now. We would actually spend $25,000 to $30,000 to hire a consultant to help us write the initial RFP. So the other option is we sole source to AE. So single sourcing the design services for this project does not technically meet the requirements of the procurement policy. However, council does have the right to make the decision to vary from procurement policy based on special circumstances. One of the special circumstances I want to make note of is when we put out a proposal to hire a company to do the infrastructure needs study in the 20-year plan, AE was the only response we received. Are we going to get more responses for this design project? Possibly. Are we not? We don't know. Some consultants will look at it and say you already have a design team that is working at your plant and has all the information at your plant. Can they compete with them coming in fresh? Just something to keep in mind. AE is working with the city on that project. I mentioned that. They have worked with the city before, doing capacity studies for us during our negotiations for the shared services agreement, and they have all the information on the plant. They have provided us with a proposal, and the order of magnitude of that proposal is about $260,000 to $290,000, based on if there's anything additional that needs to happen. Costs associated with the necessary remediation of the filters and the launders is in the future. That's not part of this. This is basically just the design portion of the package. And those costs, any works that are included, get included into rate studies for when rates are done in the future. The cost for the detailed design, as I mentioned, is about $260,000 plus HST. Some additional costs may be incurred during the design process if the city decides to do a construction manager at risk process. And I won't take up a whole lot of time to explain what that is. It's kind of like a modified design build. We've all had discussions about the design build projects before. It's similar to that. The construction management team basically takes the risk of trying to ensure that everything works exactly the way it's supposed to. Less risk on the city. But to do that, we need to bring the construction manager into the process while we're doing design so they have some input into that design. So there could be some additional costs over and above AE, depending on what timing we get that construction management team in. I will be bringing forward at a future meeting a report on what construction management at risk is, and I would probably bring the consultant in to help explain that. So we do have in the budget for this year $250,000 for replacement of the media. We recommend that $250,000 go towards the design project. It is operations recommendation that we hire AE to start immediately on this design project. And future costs related to rehabilitation is in the magnitude of $1.2 to to 1.5 million. And I apologize for being so lengthy, but I wanted to make sure everybody understood.
No, that is a very important upgrade that needs to be done. Before we have our councillor speak, CAO, did you have a point of information?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know that this is all fresh for everyone, including the treasurer, and so I don't want to put her on the spot, but I just was wondering if she could provide some comment in regards to the financial implications, since she hasn't seen this report yet. Sorry, Madam Treasurer.
So it's my understanding that the bulk of construction costs would be included in the 2024 budget. So this is just to do the design for the work. And furthermore, this is just being brought forward because to move forward with the recommendation, we would not be following our procurement bylaw. So council approval is required in order for staff to be able to take this particular direction.
Thank you. Speakers, we have Councillor Keel, and then Councillor Purcell, and then Councillor Giacono and Lafreniere. Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to move that we award the design of the WPP filters and wanderers to Associated Engineering Limited per the direction. Mr. CAO, do we need any special wording with respect to the procurement policy waiver?
I think there should be some mention into it in regards to the motion, but yeah, basically putting aside normal procurement policies.
So I would include that that waiver as part of the motion. Certainly, when you arrive on council, and I think the first meeting we were at, I think we spent 1.some million on the Moffat Street project. You learn very quickly that you're spending a lot of taxpayers' dollars, and you want to do it for the right reasons. Now, yes, we're talking about waiving a procurement policy. But I want people to know that I take that very seriously and that this is not something that I would do without the groundwork, Mr. Lewis, that you raised. Given the fact that AE is already involved as much as they are, given the fact that you have a recent quote from them and whatnot, I just want you to know that that's kind of what's informing my ability to sit here and say, sure, let's waive the procurement policy, and you know, I don't do that lightly, but this is an important, you know, our water system here in the city of Pembroke. If ratepayers don't know, we're held personally liable for that as councillors. So I'm sure all of us take it very seriously. For that reason, as well as the general nature of making sure that we have a good water source. So I just wanted to mostly make my comments known that I wouldn't expect me to waive the procurement policy often, but in this particular case, based specifically on the detailed background that you gave as to why we should, that's why I'm able to do it tonight.
Okay, thank you. So motion by Councillor Keel. You have a seconder? Councillor Purcell, and you'd like to speak?
Just in terms of the sole sourcing as part of the procurement policy, I know that they have the expertise and they're able to perform that work activity. I know that other organizations use that sole source component in terms of procurement packages. So, you know, I could see that in this case, just based on the timeframes that you had provided. So I truly support the option 2 and sole sourcing that out to Associated Engineering. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Giacono.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm against sole sourcing, basically, but based on the urgency of this project, I don't think we have any choice. We have to proceed. And as Mr. Lewis said, the time frame, everything is, you know, 15, 20, 25 months. We can't wait when you're dealing with water, especially when we reflect on the Walkerton issue and Justice O'Connor's ruling some time ago about everyone's responsible to provide clean drinking water. We have to proceed. Thank you.
Councillor Lafreniere.
Everything's been said. Thank you.
Okay. Call the question. Those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. So, yes, yes. So we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconder, Councillor Purcell. Those in favor? Carried. We are adjourned.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the council meeting to order for July 11th, 2023. I'd ask everyone to please stand for an opening prayer or reflection. Before opening this meeting of council, I would ask those who wish, each in your own way, silently join in a prayer of guidance over these proceedings. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest regarding this agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of council of June 20th. I have Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Lafreniere. Those in favor? That's carried. Next, we have adopting minutes from various committees. The first is Planning and Development Committee, June 6, 2023. I have Councillor Giacono, seconded by Councillor Keel. Those in favor? That is carried. Next is the Finance and Admin Committee, June 6, 2023. I have Councillor Lafreniere, seconded by Councillor Keel. Those in favor? Carried. Next one is Parks and Recreation Committee. To entertain a motion for that, June 20th, 23. I have Councillor Keel, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Those in favor? That is carried. Lastly, we have the Operations Committee, May 16th, 2023. I have Councillor Keel, seconded by Councillor Lafreniere. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So committee reports. First, I have Operations Committee tender number 22-1733. Councillor Lafreniere.
Your combined committee of council begs to report and recommend from its meeting held this evening as follows. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Troy Purcell, that contract number 22-1733 Phase 2, Bennett Street and Boundary Road Water Main and Taylor Bridge Water Main be awarded to RGT Kluche Construction for an estimated contract value of $3,370,325 plus HST.
Moved by Councillor Lafreniere, seconded by Councillor Purcell, that contract number 22-1733, Phase 2, Bennett Street and Boundary Road Water Main and Taylor Bridge Water Main be awarded to RGT Kluche Construction for an estimated contract value $3,370,325 plus HST. Councillor Lafreniere, did you wish to speak to the motion?
It was discussed earlier.
Okay. Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. The next, we have bylaw 2023-52, tax assistance bylaw. Councillor Giacono.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of Council, moved by myself and seconded by the Deputy Mayor, Brian Abdallah, that bylaw 2023-52, being a bylaw to provide tax assistance to certain elderly and disabled residents who are owners of real property in the city of Pembroke, be adopted and passed, and further, that the said bylaw be signed by yourself, Your Worship, the clerk, and sealed with the seal of the corporation awaiting your signature.
Moved by Councillor Giacono, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, that bylaw 2023, a bylaw to provide tax assistance to certain elderly and disabled residents who are owners of real property in the city of Pembroke, be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the Mayor and Clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Giacono.
Thank you, Your Worship. As this was proposed March 7, 2023 at the Finance Administration Committee meeting, and it has been some time, the bylaw is to provide tax assistance to certain elderly and disabled residents who are owners of real property in the city of Pembroke. And this bylaw will change the city's tax relief program to be similar with the county of Renfrew, Your Worship. Members of Council, thank you.
Thank you. Call the question. Those in favor? And that is carried. Next matter, Deputy Mayor, Resolution 2023-013.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ed Giacono, that the Corporation of the City of Pembroke deems it expedient to transfer the following amounts to or from reserves or reserve funds for the 2022 fiscal year. And this is a 3-page read, so it'll take some time. Thank you very much for giving me this motion. Transfer $1,404,086 from equipment and vehicles reserved to finance capital equipment purchases, and transfer $2,365.81 from the Heritage Mural Reserve Fund to finance 2022 deficit as approved by the local board, and transfer $20,677.67 from the PBA reserve to cover the 2022 deficit as approved by local board, and transfer $4,000 to the Rotary Park Reserve for donation received, and transfer $86.57 to the Disability Reserve Fund for firefighters 2023 sick leave liability, transferred $611,636.97 from the General Capital Reserve to finance capital projects, transfer $595,462.72 to the General Capital Reserve, and transfer $15,000 to the Parking Lot Reserve, and transfer federal funding in the amount of $888,539.52 to the Federal Gas Tax Reserve, and transfer $100,000 from the Library Contingency Reserve to the Library Capital Reserve to finance the capital projects, and transfer the 2022 Library Fund surplus in the amount of $107,318.78 to the Library Contingency Reserve, and transfer $12,635.13 from the Library Contingency to the Library Capital Fund to finance building improvements, and transfer $2,000 sick leave contingency to Library Contingency Reserve, and transfer $3,100 to the Library Contingency Reserve, and transfer $3,805.51 from Library Multicultural Festival Reserve to cover the 2022 event deficit, and transfer provincial funding in the amount of $115,041.25 to the Dedicated Gas Tax Reserve, and transfer $118,000 from Dedicated Gas Tax Reserve to Pembroke Area Handy Bus, and transfer $142,134.80 to Admin Benefits Reserve Fund for funding received, and transfer $35,434.54 from the Admin Benefits Reserve Fund as previously approved by Council, and transfer $114,187 from the Federal Gas Tax Reserve Fund to finance capital, and transfer $61,361.94 to the Water Meter Reserve for a 2020 surplus, and transfer $200,000 to the Water Plant Reserve as per the 2022 budget, and transfer $217,500 to the Water Tower Reserve as per the 2022 budget, and transfer 2022 waste management surplus in the amount of $42,958.57 to the Waste Management Reserve, and transfer excuse me, $219,771.24 to the Working Fund Reserves for projects carried forward to 2023 to be reversed in 2023, and transfer $249,569 from the Working Fund Reserves for the 2021 projects carried forward to 2022, and transfer $13,500 from the Capital Fund to the OPP Station Reserves Fund as per the 2022 budget. Let's take a little sip of water here. Transfer the 2022 Sewer Fund surplus in the amount of $318,934.69 to Pollution Control Capital Reserve, and transfer the 2022 Industrial Park Storm Sewer revenues in the amount of $5,260.34 to the Industrial Park Storm Sewer Reserve, and transfer $114,701.32 to the Pollution Control Plant Reserve for 2022 projects carrying forward to 2022 to 2023 to be reversed in 2023, and transfer $100,000 to the Pollution Control Plant Reserve as per the 2022 budget, and transfer $320,223.63 from the Pollution Control Reserve Fund to finance capital, and transfer $446,500 $519 to Equipment Vehicles Reserve as per the 2022 budget, and transfer $189,000 to the Fire Equipment Reserve as per the 2022 budget, and transfer $190,508.96 from the Fire Equipment Reserve to finance fire equipment and capital purchases, and transfer $28,440 to the Animal Control Reserve as per the SPCA agreement, and transfer $240,127.58 from the modernization funding grant to finance capital projects, and transfer $6,188.66 to the Community Improvement Plan Reserve for 2022 surplus, and transfer $180,000 from the Legal Contingency Fund to finance capital projects, and transfer $202,063.48 from the COVID Safe Restart Fund as per the year-end report, and transfer $19,154.04 from the COVID Safe Restart Fund to finance capital equipment purchases, and transfer $13,609.04 from industrial land sales to fund repurchase from Lindy McCool, excuse me, and transfer $6,666.43 from McCool Park Lot Levy as per the 2022 budget, and transfer excuse me, $250,000 from the 2021 accumulated surplus to the Aquatic Center Reserve, and transfer $165,000 to the Aquatic Center Reserve as per the 2022 budget, and transfer $36,723.78 from the Library Contingency Reserve for 2022 projects as approved by the Library Board, and transfer $115,655 development charges revenue collected in 2022 to Development Charges Reserve Fund, and transfer $352,150.59 from the Development Charges Reserve Fund to finance capital projects. You're welcome.
Thank you. And moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Giacomo, various sums being transferred from reserves or reserve funds as already articulated by the Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
Well, that was the longest motion I ever made in my political career, and it just goes to show how busy our dedicated Treasury is, and the CEO and staff, and we commend them for all the work they do. Thank you.
The question, those in favor? And that is carried. Next, for Mayor's report. On July 1st, I had the honor to attend the Canada Day celebrations. I'm truly proud to be a Canadian and resident of the city of Pembroke. I recognize that as a country, we are not perfect. Canada Day is a time to reflect not only upon how we are blessed, but also a time to reflect upon the inequities and injustices to the Indigenous peoples and others. We must and will do better and be more inclusive of all. On July 5th, I had the pleasure of attending the Senior Provincial Baseball Tournament held in Pembroke. The event welcomed many players and parents from across Ontario. Together with our member of Provincial Parliament, we took part in the opening ceremonies by throwing the first pitch. Congratulations to the organizers for a job well done, organizing and hosting this event that had not been held in Pembroke for decades. Perhaps we will now be known for more than just Hockey Town, but also Baseball Town. On July 10th, I attended the Grind Barbecue Appreciation Night to celebrate and to recognize the accomplishments of the annual signature event being Coldest Night of the Year. The Grind is most appreciative of the support received of the community as they fulfill the much-needed work in our community. The Grind raised more than $107,000 due to the generosity of the public, who sees the value in the mission of the Grind. The Grind provided a statistics page for 2022 that outlines the many services it provided, including numerous referrals to various agencies and a significant number of wellness checks and client service calls, and that will be provided to the CAO so that anyone wishing access to it can have it. And they presented us with a certificate of being a site sponsor. Today, I had the pleasure to meet with Jerry Benoit, a number of young athletes who will be representing our community as Team Ontario at the upcoming 2023 North America Indigenous Games being held in Halifax from July 15th to the 23rd. And he presented me with this Team Ontario shirt that they'll proudly be wearing. The games are held every 3 years and is a high level of various sport. And I would ask that please join me in cheering on Team Ontario as they compete. I understand that it will be covered by various media, including YouTubes. As always, stay safe and be kind to one another. Councillor updates, Deputy Mayor. Oh, sorry, I skipped it. Sorry. Notices of motion. Councillor Purcell?
I have two notices of motions. I'll be bringing forward a recommendation to implement a shelter warming station, cooling station, and support drop-in center bylaw. As well, I'm looking for changes in terms of the indemnification bylaw to not only include staff, but council and any other situations where indemnification is required. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and sorry about that. And so now, Councillor updates, Deputy Mayor.
I just have a few items tonight. I'll make it quick here after that long motion. Community watch zone. I volunteered to be the captain of the Pembroke Waterfront Park. If anyone wants to join us and get on our list, I'll be having a meeting there later this month. I'll notice it through social media. Just more eyes and ears on the ground, especially in light of the recent vandalism. As Councillor Frenier said tonight, it'll complement the installed cameras that will be going down there. Community garden is up and running, and on behalf of Mayor Gervais and I, we want to thank all the volunteers. If anyone would like a tour of the community garden, you're welcome to contact Mayor Gervais or I. We can take you on site. It's a locked facility, or we could, or just drive by and enjoy what we have there. June 25th, I attended the Strawberry Social. I met up with Councillor Keel there, and the mayor was there also, serving cake. I volunteered as it was a new technical term, special skills are needed. I volunteered as a cake shuffler. So if anybody wants to know what's involved in being a cake shuffler, just let me know. I just want to thank the Ottawa Valley Historical Society and all the volunteers for that facility and for that event. We took our class there, 2 classes for a year in field trip, second last week of June, and they were there for half a day. They just completed their early settlers unit, and they went to the school, the church, blacksmith shop, the home, and all the volunteers, the students that do those educational camps should be commended. It's a very great facility right in Pembroke, so kudos to them. June 30th, it was already said tonight, no need to repeat how pleased we were to participate. I got the honor of serving hot dogs with Councillor Keel and Purcell, and I was able to eat a couple. I think I saw you eat a couple too. Anyhow, I like mustard in my hot dogs, but what a great event to build on for next year. All the kind, positive comments we received. Just kudos to the staff and sponsors and everyone that was there. They watched the movie after. It was fantastic. And then next day at the waterfront was fantastic. So, you know, the amphitheater, the music, the vendors, everything. So we're very fortunate with what we have, and we can thank, you know, the Community Foundation, Horticultural, the Kiwanis Club, everyone involved in the waterfront for making that a reality. I had the pleasure of attending the opening game and part of the last game of the great destination event we have, the provincial ball tournament. I met up with many people from out of town. I want to commend the River Cats, played a great final game. They lost to Oakville, but they're number 1 in our hearts. They would have made it to the national finals. I want to commend Amanda Williamson and her executive, and for the foresight in bringing this to Pembroke. They're close to 500 people now in the Minor Ball Association, and thank all the volunteers and sponsors. So it was a great event to have in Pembroke. On behalf of Councillor Frenier and I and Keel, the Youth Council met in June. Very positive meeting. We have plans to work with the city on the Youth Try-It Day that's coming up at the end of August. So we're going to have a booth there and get involved in that. And we're hoping to invite any youth to come and join. Our next meeting is September 26th, and we'll be putting a push on in the fall for more youth to come out and get the word out. It's going to take a while. Councillor Frenier, I attended an online local affordable housing committee meeting last month. Very positive and energetic meeting with the local developer. It's going to take all levels of government, developers, CMHC to put together a unit here, and we're going to have another meeting with developer, and I'm contacting CMHC to come to Pembroke for a workshop. This is in conjunction with the Ottawa Valley Housing Alliance, and we're waiting on to hear from our grant. We applied for a housing coordinator. So it's moving forward. It takes time. You know, it doesn't happen overnight, but the thing is we're working on it, and City Council has adopted some items, and hopefully the affordable tax will come back report to the Treasurer, and we can accept that. Two more things. The PBA, Thursdays at the Shamrock Park is the youth market, young youth entrepreneurs, so we invite everyone down there to see business in motion by the youth. And also Summer Sounds every Saturday in Shamrock Park from 11 till 2 p.m. And finally, the big thing on behalf of Councillor Purcell and I, this weekend, Friday from 6 till 8, and then 10 till 8, we've been working hard, the committee and Carthy Regimenti, the library staff, and Parks and Rec, kudos to them, city staff, everyone, economic development, tourism, the 8th annual Multicultural Festival. So all the acts are booked, everything's lined up. We're hoping for a rain-free day. If it does rain, the PMC is the other location, but there won't be any rain because we told the rain gods no rain. So this is a bang-up event. Food vendors, craft vendors, all of the multicultural acts. So we're open for great attendance by local and out-of-town guests. So kudos to Carthy and the library and everyone involved. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other Councillor Keel?
I think I'll be a little quicker, but I think the deputy mayor would have been faster, but for his prior performance. I do want to thank, as the deputy mayor noted, the mayor for coming out to the waterfront media event where we talked about the vandalism down at the park. We were also lucky to have Fred Blackstein there, who has done so much work down at our waterfront. One really can't honor that contribution enough. I think we all need to be vigilant, as the deputy mayor said, with respect to watching out for our local community. When things happen, if you notice that you need to say something. All of this costs taxpayer money when we're cleaning up after vandalism or whatnot. So we all need to, just like our own property, the city is the residents' own property, and we need to be on the lookout. I had the privilege with the mayor of attending the National Indigenous Peoples Day. That was a very interesting event, and for a midday event, so well attended. I know I said that to the mayor at the time. Despite being right in the middle of the afternoon, there were hundreds of people down there, and what was really great was to see the number of young people that were down there attending. The Strawberry Social, I was happy to attend that, and I did see the deputy mayor there. I think the mayor had left before I arrived, but that was a great annual event that we have, and it's always nice to get some strawberries and ice cream. And I ended up being not voluntold, but recruited to shuffle some cake, as the deputy mayor said. Canada Day, I could not say enough about this. I know I spoke earlier. Our Parks and Recreation Department really overdid themselves with respect to Canada Day, and the addition of the evening before, where we had the barbecue and the movie on the soccer field. I certainly hope we will be doing that again. I think we've really struck something. I don't think in the last years that I've ever seen so many people at the Canada Day events, and that was over 2 days. So kudos to the Parks and Recreation Department, all the staff, and Mr. DeRoche as the manager of that department. Finally, Festival Hall, we have one event coming up, and that's on July 21st. The last of the Duke Street Kings, Bruce Springsteen tribute. That's the only event on the calendar for this summer, but when we hit the fall, I'm not going to go through them all, but there's so many things, and you can go to festhall.ca to take a look at that and to get your tickets. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Frenier?
Yes, just briefly. I know there's like always talk about graffiti and, you know, destruction, that type of thing, but I just want to share something. I was walking down at the waterfront with my granddaughter a couple of weeks ago, and I'm just enjoying our beautiful, you know, walkway. And I saw some graffiti on the path. And as I'm approaching, I'm like, oh, I get closer, and it was wonderful. It was chalk, hope, peace, love, and it said, God look after our children. And I just thought, you know, what a wonderful piece of graffiti. And I was like pleased with it. So I just wanted to share that with you. And it just kind of added to my whole day because I needed to hear that message. But I also want to tell people about Youth Triad Expo coming up. So I know we have the Multicultural Festival. We also have the Youth Triad Expo. Last year it was just called Youth Triad, but we decided to really call it an expo because being on the new Youth Council Committee, it came up that we need a big event geared to youth. And we said, well, we already have a big event that was quite successful last year, and why don't we just expand on that? And we're going to be reaching out to services like the Phoenix Center and the new Indigenous Hub and different organizations to be represented because we want to build this and we want to let our youth know that this can continue to be their home and a place where they can contribute to society for the rest of their life. So that is Saturday, August 26th. So if anyone out there wants to put a booth in or explore it, just contact our recreation department. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Purcell?
For a list of all the activities that I attended, please visit my councillor page on Facebook. Thank you.
So we're now moving into a closed session. Councillor Purcell, I understand you have the motion.
I do. Motion for council to move into caucus meeting of July 11th, 2023, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Ian Keel, that this meeting become a closed meeting to discuss a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried out on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality under Section 239(2)K of the Municipal Act regarding the Pembroke Lumber Kings, and information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board by Canada, a province or territory, or a crown agency of any of them under Section 239(2)H of the Municipal Act regarding the business, retention, and expansion project. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Keel, that this meeting become a closed meeting to discuss, firstly, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on behalf of the municipality, Section 239, Sub 2, Sub K of the Municipal Act regarding the Pembroke Lumber Kings. And secondly, information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board by Canada, province, or territory, or crown agency of any of them, Section 239, Sub 2, Sub H of the Municipal Act regarding the business retention and expansion project. Those in favor? That is carried. We'll now move into a closed session.